Do you want a definitive list of every change to every class and every subclass for the new 2024 Player's Handbook for D&D 5e? Well, look no further because I'm here to give them to you. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody. So here at D4, each week we take a deep dive, usually anyways, into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, theorycraft about them, not to tell you the right way or the best way to play a certain character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun but also really powerful to play. So if you enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games almost as much as you enjoy playing the actual game itself, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas or advice on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am so glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name's Colby. So yeah, like many content creators for D&D, I've had access to the new 2024 Player's Handbook now for a couple of months. As I was trying to decide what content to first release on August 1st, today, the day that the embargo drops, right? I immediately thought, you know what, classes, subclasses, that's kind of the thing that I'm most interested in, the thing that's maybe going to have the biggest impact for the builds that I do, the thing that I'm guessing my viewers might be most interested in. And my original plan was to make this big comprehensive list then for every single class and subclass and then break it down into like 3 or 4 videos. But then I got thinking, first of all, if I just list 3 or 4 classes today and then wait until like tomorrow to release part 2 and then part 3 after that, well, if I don't get to the class that you are most interested in today, then you're just going to find the info somewhere else. And I would rather that you found it here. But also, historically, breaking videos into multiple parts never performs well. I don't know. YouTube algorithm just hates multi-part series, or maybe people's attention span falls off a cliff after part 1. I don't know what it is. But in the end, then I decided, screw it. We are just going to put every single class and subclass into one massive video. Yeah, that's right. You're probably looking down at the time for this and thinking 3-4 hours long. I'm guessing anyways, I just started recording. But I know that probably seems a little crazy to some of you, but here's the thing. You don't have to listen to all of this in one go. Listen to some now, some later. Maybe some tomorrow, whatever. Maybe you just cherry pick the classes or subclasses you're most interested in, and you come back to other ones another time. Maybe a month or 2 from now when you're ready to actually build your first character using the 2024 rules. I'm hoping this video can be a nice resource for you. Bookmark it, come back and just jump to the class or subclass you want a refresher on to remember exactly what it is that changed. And as always, feel free to bump this baby up to 2 times speed, or sure, use it for your D&D ASMR. Just think, now you'll get like 3 or 4 times the video length as I lull you to dreamland with my sleep-inducing monotone. Okay. Before we jump in, I've got a couple of important points to make. First off, I think the best way to listen to this video will be to have the existing class and subclass features in front of you while you listen or watch so that you can quickly see what it used to be compared to what it is now. I'm not necessarily going to go into detail on what every feature used to be, but instead, I'm just going to tell you what's new or different now, or just mention that nothing changed for a feature. So I'm often assuming that you know what the feature used to look like. We are already going to be here all day. Otherwise, we would be here all night. Also, if I don't mention a class or a subclass feature, it means there's no substantive change as far as I can tell. I'll often still mention these and just say no change, but not always, so just in case you think I skipped something, that's why. It doesn't mean the feature is gone. Finally, I am going to miss things and or get stuff wrong. This is inevitable. I am human. There's a lot of content here, and I may misinterpret the way something's worded or miss an important distinction. I've done my best, of course, to be meticulous here, but yeah, thanks in advance for forgiving my inevitable errors. Feel free to point them out in the comments if you catch one. Oh, actually, finally, I'm going to try and move a little quickly here. The editing also is going to be done with a much lighter touch than usual, just so that I and my friend Dallin, who edits these videos for me, can actually get this behemoth prepped and ready to go to drop on August 1. Okay, we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump into D&D episode number 176, every class and subclass change for 2024. Right after I tell you about today's sponsor. Before we continue, I've got to tell you guys about Arcane Mini's now in Kickstarter 5e compatible compendium, Moonsoon. This book looks so freaking amazing. It immerses you in the new campaign setting of Moonsoon, an archipelago world of adventure ruled by 12 god moons that are themselves explorable, actually, those moons. This book is over 600 pages long, filled with 11 new animal and plant-like races, like the enigmatic and friendly Cappy. Oh, so cute. Or the mysterious Kralan. 13 new subclasses, I love that, like the Selenographer Wizard or the Windrunner Rogue. Yes, please, sounds like my new favorite character. But there is so much more. New spells, new monsters, new and even craftable magic items using the harvesting and crafting system from Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting. So it's compatible with that third-party book, right? While exploring the god moons of this world, you might end up having an epic boss battle using my good friend Will from D&D Shorts' gargantuan monster fighting system from his Ryoko's book. And I love that they're incorporating here these other like third-party creators, though no, you don't need to own those other books in order to use them in this Moonsoon world here, which is so lovely and generous. To top it all off, there's even an entire campaign right inside the book, taking characters from levels 1 to 7 to help you take your first steps of discovery into this beautiful and dangerous world and its accompanying moons. There is just so much here. I don't have time to get into it all. I haven't even mentioned the moon deck system they introduce. It's sort of like a tarot deck to give your campaign unexpected twists and heroic feats and deepen your roleplay. You really need to go check out the Kickstarter page to see all of the amazing stuff on offer with this book. When you do, I would appreciate it if you would use the URL that I've put in the video description and the pinned comment, as that's how they'll know I sent you. But this is important, everybody. At the time of this video's release, there are only a few days left before the Kickstarter ends, so do not delay. Just hit pause really quick and go check it out. I'll still be here when you get back. I've seen some of the goodies you can pick up if you back them now, and you don't want to miss out on them. Those Liquid Core moon dice are gorgeous. And I mean, Capybara plushie? Come on. Anyways, huge thanks to Arcane Minis. Big congrats on destroying that funding goal. I can't wait to see the final product here. And let's get back to the breakdown. Okay, so we are going to do this alphabetically. First, all of the changes to an entire class, and then its subclasses first, and then move on to the next class and subclasses, okay? Ready to go? First up then, everyone's favorite brute, the Barbarian, at level 1, Rage. So we get the same number of rages per long rest as we used to, but we do regain 1 use after a short rest now. That's huge, actually. Extra damage still requires a strength-based attack, but it no longer requires it to be a melee attack, so you could throw it, right? So thrown weapons, we're good. Incoming thrown weapon builds. Now, Rage also lasts up to 10 minutes and continues each round if you make an attack, force an enemy to make a saving throw, that's new, or just take a bonus action to keep it going. Taking damage no longer keeps it alive, but we've got more ways to continue our rage. That's nice. Unarmored defense is pretty much the same. Weapon Mastery, though, this one is new, and a lot of classes get access to Weapon Mastery now, so I'll just explain it this one time. Refer back to this part when you get to Fighters and Rogues and Rangers and Paladins, okay? If you need a refresher. So, for those unfamiliar with weapon masteries, every weapon now has an associated weapon mastery property. You don't automatically get access to the weapon mastery property just by having proficiency with the weapon. You need a feature from a class or to take a feat that says you get to use weapon masteries, okay? These weapon masteries are really fantastic. I'm going to go over each one of them quickly. And as long as you have access to the weapon mastery for the associated weapon that you're using, then you can benefit from it. You can use it when you make attacks, right? First up, Cleave. This lets you do weapon damage to a second target standing within 5 feet. Graze lets you do ability modifier damage even if you miss your attack. Nick lets you use 2-weapon fighting without using your bonus action for the offhand attack. Both happen as part of the attack action. That's awesome. Push lets you push a creature up to 10 feet away from you if they are larger or smaller. Sap gives the enemy disadvantage on their next attack. Slow reduces enemy move speed by 10 feet. Topple forces a constitution saving throw or knocks them prone. And Vex gives you advantage on your next attack if your attack with the Vex weapon hits first. We are going to be having a lot of fun with these in future builds, no doubt. I love the power it brings to weapon users and the variety it gives to different weapons in game now. Now, barbarians can use the mastery properties of 2 weapons of their choice. So maybe you take Great Axe and can cleave with it, and a maul that you can topple with, right? You You can change one of those after a long rest, and you gain more weapon masteries as you level. At level 2, Danger Sense, there's no change. Reckless Attack, though, one of my favorite abilities in the game, changed so that it impacts all of your attacks until the start of your next turn. It was always weird that if you were attacking recklessly, it didn't impact like opportunity attacks, right? It only impacted attacks on your turn. This is a nice fix. It does still give enemies advantage on their attacks against you. At level 3, we get our subclass. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. But then Primal Knowledge is a new-ish feature. We got this in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Now it's officially part of the player's handbook. I like that. It just gives you proficiency in another barbarian skill, but also it's updated now to let us use our strength instead to make an ability check that normally uses acrobatics, intimidation, perception? That seems weird. Stealth? I'm so mad that I'm sneaky. I don't know. Or survival. That's kind of awesome. It's kind of weird in some of them, but we're told that this works because our strength represents primal power coursing through you, honing your agility, bearing, and senses. I'm not complaining. It makes us sort of maybe kind of animalistic, I suppose. Yay for barbarians being slightly better skill monkeys. At level 7, we get Feral Instinct. We still have advantage on initiative rolls with this, but it no longer says that we can still act normally on our first turn, even if we're surprised. The main reason for this is because surprise is totally different now, in case you didn't know. It simply gives you disadvantage on your initiative roll, but you still will always act normally on your first turn. I think I like that. It definitely simplifies things. It makes getting surprise a lot less powerful. That could be good. It might balance combat a little bit. It might speed up gameplay even. Instinctive Pounce is a new feature that we get here that says we can move half our speed as part of the bonus action that we use to rage. It's pretty nice for those fights where you start off, far away from your enemy. At level 9, Brutal Strike. Brutal Strike. Yeah, this used to be Brutal Critical. My least favorite barbarian feature. Brutal Strike now says that if you're using Reckless Attack, you can give up advantage on one of your attacks on your turn. If the attack still hits, the target takes an extra d10 of damage, and you can either push them 15 feet away and move up to half your move speed towards them if you want, or reduce their speed by 15 feet until your next turn. Okay, I like it. It's a little tricky in that it will be good to use against lower armor classes and probably bad to use against higher ones, at least on average, and that frustrates me, if I'm being honest. Is it an improvement? Sometimes yes, sometimes it's a nerf because you don't want to use it, and thus, when you crit, you will do less damage than you did in the 2014 rules, right? And nerfing a feature, even if it's just part of the time that was already pretty bad, feels really bad to me. That said, I do think I like it overall. I like that we have options. I like the variety, but I don't know why they couldn't just say, once per turn you get to do this, and not have you have to sacrifice advantage. We're level 9. Casters are getting Wall of Force and Hold Monster, right? Let us get a once per turn d10 of damage and a push, right? Well, anyways, at level 11, Relentless Rage has changed to drop you not to 1 hit point, but to twice your barbarian level in hit points, or 22 for now. Much better. It might not actually be a difference maker in keeping you alive any longer. We're level 11, right? But with Rage, yeah, it most likely will. At level 13, Improved Brutal Strike gives us new Brutal Strike options. We still have to give up advantage on a Reckless Attack, but now if it hits, we can also stagger them, giving them disadvantage on their next saving throw. That's actually pretty cool. And they can't make opportunity attacks until their next turn. I really like that. You can also Sunder them, which says that until our next turn, the next attack made by another creature against them gets a +5 bonus to hit. Okay? I can see that being pretty useful depending on your teammates. If nothing else, it's different, it's unique, and it adds to some sort of tactical teamwork gameplay, and you kind of see a lot of that. That's a pretty recurring theme, I think, with 2024. I still wish we didn't have to give up advantage, but I appreciate the different options that we're getting to do stuff in combat that's more than just hit things, right? At level 15, Persistent Rage now says that once per day, when you roll initiative, you can regain all expended uses of rage. That's nice, but I'm sure there are plenty of tables where you might not even need this, especially now that we can regain 1 use of rage with a short rest once per day. But also, with this feature, our rage lasts 10 minutes now without needing to do anything to extend it round to round. So it even persists through being incapacitated. It does still end if we put on heavy armor. I want to see that happen in game. Barbarian, while raging in the middle of a fight, finds a suit of plate mail. I'm not proficient in this yet, but maybe I'll take the 10 minutes to put it on. DM, your rage now ends. Barbarian, no! At level 17, we get improved Brutal Strike. Our damage for Brutal Strike goes to 2d10, and we can use 2 different Brutal Strike effects whenever we use it. Okay, I'm still a little bugged, but it's good. It is. At level 18, Indomitable Might now affects strength checks and saves, letting you just use your strength score in place of your roll for either, which is potentially pretty great. At level 19, all classes now get an epic boon, or another feat of your choice. If you don't want an epic boon, you'd be crazy to pass on it, of course, because epic boons are amazing. And while they existed in 5e before, they're a little bit more official now. Let me go over them very quickly here one time. Again, I'm not going to do this for every single class, but we ought to at least talk about them once. So, Combat Prowess. This increases our strength or dexterity by 1 to a cap of 30, and this is true for all of these epic boons, and lets us turn a missed weapon attack into a hit once per turn. Awesome. Dimensional Travel increases our intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 and lets us teleport immediately after taking the attack or magic action. Energy Resistance increases Constitution by 1 and gives resistance to 2 energy damage types, acid, fire, psychic, etc. And says that when we take damage of one of those types, we can use our reaction to redirect some of it to someone else. Fate increases a mental ability by 1 and lets us add 2d4 as a bonus or penalty to someone else's d20 roll once per short rest. Fortitude increases Constitution by 1, our hit points by 40, and lets us regain extra hit points equal to our Constitution modifier any time we regain hit points, but only once per turn. Irresistible Offense increases strength or dexterity by 1 and says our bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage always ignores resistance, and when we roll a natural 20 on our attack, we deal extra damage equal to the ability score we increased with the feat. It feels like it could have happened just once per turn, period, and it wouldn't be overpowered. Still pretty good. Recovery increases Constitution by 1 and says once per day when we drop to 0 hit points, we instead go to 1 plus half our hit point maximum. Also, it gives us a pool of 10 d10s per day that we can use as a bonus action to heal. Skill increases any ability score by 1, gives proficiency in all skills and expertise in one skill. Speed increases our dexterity by 1, lets us disengage and end the grappled condition as a bonus action, and increases our speed by 30 feet. Vroom vroom. Spell Recall increases a mental ability by 1 and says that when we cast a spell with a level 1 through 4 slot, we roll a d4, and if we roll the same number as the spell slot isn't expended. Ooh, I hate chaos. That's pretty cool. Night Spirit increases anything but strength or constitution by 1 and lets us use a bonus action to go invisible if we are in dim light or darkness, though that ends if we take an action, a bonus action, or a reaction. Also, though, while in dim light or darkness, we have resistance to all damage but psychic and radiant. Finally, True Sight increases a mental ability and just gives us True Sight out to 60 feet. Whew, done. That is an amazing list. I certainly hope that you get to play with them sometime. Finally, at level 20, Primal Champion is the same, except our cap is bumped to 25 instead of 24. Mostly probably to make room for that epic boon, right? Okay, that's it for the core Barbarian class. The other classes shouldn't take this long, I think, because I'm not going to be going over weapon masteries and epic boons, but let's jump into Barbarian Subclasses. So every class has 4 subclasses in the new player's handbook. The vast majority of them are ones we've seen in previous 5e books, but there are a few brand new ones, and I'll mention those when we get to them. First up, Berserker. This was an original subclass for the Barbarian, and it has had some really nice changes. At level 3, Frenzy. This is the biggest and best change, I think. Instead of giving you an extra bonus action attack for an entire minute at the cost of a level of exhaustion, which made the feature all but unusable, despite my own attempts to do so, you now get to do extra damage when you are raging to the first target you recklessly attack. The damage equals a number of d6s equal to your rage damage bonus. So 2d6 extra damage at level 3, right? But it will scale with Barbarian levels, and that's great. Barbarians are famously bad at scaling damage-wise in 5e, at least under 2014, right? So anything we can do to address that is a big bonus in my book. At level 6, we get Mindless Rage. The only real difference here is that you're still immune to Charmed and Feared while raging, and if you're Charmed or Feared when you enter Rage, it just ends that condition now, rather than suspending the condition until your rage ends, which was kind of weird. At level 10, Retaliation. This swapped places with Intimidating Presence, and I like like it. It's not much different. It just specifies that the reaction melee attack you make against an enemy within 5 feet who damages you can be an unarmed strike too. At level 14, we get Intimidating Presence now instead of at level 10, and it got some big improvements. Now it only takes a bonus action instead of an action. You can attempt to frighten any number of creatures within 30 feet, not just one. The saving throw is based on your strength, not your charisma, and you don't have to keep using your action each round to keep them frightened, though they do get to attempt a save at the end of each turn to break it. Now, it has limited uses. It's once per day unless you spend a use of your rage to replenish the charge, but since it's actually a pretty decent ability now, I have no problem with that whatsoever. And that's it for the Berserker. I love the changes here. It is the quintessential Raging Barbarian, and I think it's going to be a really strong one. Next up then, the Wildheart Barbarian, that most famous of Barb subclasses, the Totem Warrior, right, has now been changed to Wildheart. And at level 3, Totem Spirit has been renamed to Rage of the Wilds. Now, instead of being forced to choose one animal when you gain this level and be sort of stuck with it forever, you can pick a different one every time you rage, which is cool. But there are fewer choices, which is fine, I think, because a lot of those were kind of, no one ever used them, right? Now we've just got Bear, which is what 99% of players would pick before. It still gives resistance to more damage types, but it's now everything but Psychic still, but also Force, Necrotic, and Radiant. So a bit of a nerf to Bear Barbs, but hey, may have been warranted. Let's be honest. Eagle now lets us disengage and dash as part of the bonus action that we use to rage, and lets us use a bonus action to disengage and dash while our rage lasts. Wolf is the same as before, giving allies advantage on attacks against enemies within 5 feet of you. Elk and Tiger are gone, but that's okay, they were bad, and I love being able to choose every time we rage. Very nice. Level 6, Aspect of the Wilds used to be Aspect of the Beast, and this lets us choose 3 new options affiliated with entirely new animals that give a benefit we can swap out with a long rest. Owl gives us dark vision or extends existing dark vision by 60 feet. Panther gives a climb speed equal to our speed, and Salmon gives a swim speed equal to our speed. Again, some nice utility that we can swap out when we need to, depending on the situation, and that's really cool. At level 10, we get Nature Speaker instead of Spirit Walker, but it's basically the same, letting us cast Commune with Nature as a ritual, and I mean, it's situationally useful, sure, but it's a decently powerful utility spell. It's 5th level. Depending on your table and adventure, it could really come in handy once in a while. At level 14, Power of the Wilds, renamed from Totemic Attunement. This is very similar still, but with fewer renamed options. And again, we can pick a different one each time we rage. Falcon gives us a fly speed equal to our speed when we rage. We don't fall at the end of our turn now, but we can't be wearing armor, any armor. Lion gives disadvantage to enemies within 5 feet if they attack anyone but you. The tanking option, that's great. Ram knocks an enemy prone if they are large or smaller when you hit with a melee attack. All potentially great options, and again, being able to choose between them depending on the situation is fantastic. And that's it for the Wildheart Barbarian. A little nerf in one area and lots of increased versatility and diversity and power otherwise, I think, so I'll take it. Next up, a brand new subclass, the Path of the World Tree. This might be my new favorite Barbarian subclass, so let's dig in. At level 3, we get Vitality of the Tree. This says that when you rage, you gain temporary hit points equal to your Barbarian level. Not bad, but arguably better. At the beginning of each of your turns while raging, you can give a number of d6s in temporary hit points to an ally within 10 feet of you equal to your rage damage bonus. So 2d6 temporary hit points to an ally at level 3 every single turn. That's pretty dang nice. At level 6, we get Branches of the Tree. While raging, if a creature starts their turn within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to force a strength save based on your own strength mod, or they are teleported to any unoccupied space within 5 feet of you, and you can reduce their speed to 0 until the end of their current turn. That is freaking awesome. Such a great way to force at least one enemy per round to target you instead of your allies. This Barbarian is shaping up to be a pretty great Protector subclass, right? Doesn't say if a willing creature can choose to fail this teleport, but I assume that most tables will allow it, and that's probably their intent. At level 10, we get Battering Roots. This says during your turn, so not if you're like reacting and hitting with an opportunity attack, right? But during your turn, your reach with melee, heavy, and versatile weapons is 10 feet greater. Also, when you hit with them, you can activate the Push or Topple masteries with them in addition to any other weapon masteries the weapon you're using may have. Okay, there's definitely some fun things I can think of to do with that. Super awesome. At level 14, travel along the tree. This says that when you activate your rage and as a bonus action afterwards while rage is active, you can teleport up to 60 feet. Dang. Also, once per rage, you can increase the teleport distance to 150 feet and bring up to 6 willing creatures within 10 feet of you along for the ride. Oh, that is going to be fun to use to confuse the heck out of your enemies on the battlefield. I really love this subclass. But finally, we're going to end with Path of the Zealot, my old favorite. I'm glad that it made it into the player's handbook officially here, right? But there's not a ton of changes to it from when we saw it in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So at level 3, Divine Fury, no real change. Warrior of the Gods, though, big change. This now gives us a pool of 4 d12s that you can use to heal yourself with a bonus action. The pool replenishes on a long rest, and you get more d12s with Barbarian level. I mean, I suppose this is probably an improvement. I kind of loved the old someone who reses you doesn't need to spend material components to do so thing, just because it let me feel like I could be even more reckless with this character. It honestly probably saw very little use in game, right? There's not a lot of actual death that happens at most tables, I think, and especially not for barbarians. So this self-heal with a bonus action isn't fantastic, but it's probably more useful overall. At level 6, Fanatical Focus improved in that when you reroll a failed save once per rage, you now get to add your rage damage bonus to the roll, making it much more likely to succeed. Nice. At level 10, Zealous Presence, the only real change is you can now use it more often by expending uses of your rage to do so. And at level 14, we get Rage of the Gods instead of Rage Beyond Death. This says once per long rest, you can gain flight for 1 minute when you activate your rage. You've also got hover. Man, everybody is flying these days. You're gonna see a lot more of this. I think the old Rage Beyond Death might have been more powerful. Maybe Wizards of the Coast thought it was too good. It basically made you unkillable for a minute. Probably too good. Did I say that there weren't a lot of changes to this subclass? Most of the subclasses that weren't in the 2014 player's handbook, but then we saw them later and then they got put in the 2024 handbook, didn't actually get a lot of changes. This is kind of an exception to that rule, I guess. So that is it for the Barbarian. Some pretty great changes altogether. Overall, I think we're getting more damage, we're getting more utility, we're getting a lot more versatility. And yeah, this is one of the classes that maybe got the most improvements, I think, comparing 2014 to 2024, and I love that. Okay, 1 down, 11 to go. Let's move on to bards. Bards at level 1. Let's talk about spellcasting. It specifies that you can now replace a cantrip, with another one when you gain a bard level. Before, the wording made it sound like that might only work with leveled spells. Now, this is true for all spellcasters who get cantrips, while wizards gain some added versatility. Also, you no longer have spells known as a bard, just a number of prepared spells. It's functionally the same for this class, but it looks different for clerics and druids, for example. As for bardic inspiration, a couple of quality of life improvements to inspiration. First, it needs to be used within the next hour, not 10 minutes. Much better. Second, the wording's changed in that it says that your ally can use your inspiration on any d20 check instead of specifically an attack, an ability check, or save. Functionally, that's going to be pretty much the same 99% of the time. There may be another d20 check that you have to throw in there once in a while, and you can use inspiration for that now. But also, yeah, they can use it on a failed check instead of waiting to see the roll but not yet knowing the outcome. Most of the time that's going to be the same thing, but sometimes not, I guess. Anyways, a nice little improvement. Level 2, Jack of all trades, is basically the same, though it can no longer benefit your initiative rolls. Make note, boo. At level 3, you still get your Bard College subclass, right? We'll talk about those later. At level 5, Font of Inspiration is slightly improved in that you can now also spend a spell slot to regain a use of your Bardic Inspiration. No action required. You know what? That might not be slightly improved. That might be massively improved. I love that. At level 7, Counter Charm is actually half decent now. It received at level 7 instead of 6, but it just says that if we or a creature fail a save against being charmed or frightened, we can use our reaction to cause the save to be re-rolled and with advantage. Nice. And no limit on how often you can use it either. I do wonder if we can use this against something that is already affecting an ally, but they get to make a save at the end of their turn to end the condition, and then they fail that save, right? I don't think so. The way this is worded makes it seem like you can only use it when the effect that applies charmed or frightened first takes place. but I could be wrong. At level 10, Magical Secrets. Arguably the best bard ability got some buffs and some nerfs. Now we don't just get to choose 2 spells from other classes' spell lists here, and then again when we get the feature later. Instead, we're told that now and anytime going forward that the prepared spells number in the bard table increases, which will be every level from here on out except 12, 14, and 16, then any of our new prepared spells can come from the bard or cleric, druid, or wizard spell lists. So no more taking Swift Quiver and being a better ranger than the ranger. Though I would argue, and have actually a long time ago, that spell isn't actually as good a choice as you might think. Or Holy Weapon though, or Find Greater Steed, which actually doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, no more Find Steed, I guess. I'll talk more about that when we get to Paladins. Also, whenever we replace a spell prepared for ourselves, we can replace it with a spell from those lists. I love this in that we get a lot more magical secrets. I'm sad that it's not just 2 new spells that we can add to our existing list and that we don't get to pick from Rangers and Pallies. I think overall I'd still rather have this than the old version, but it's not just a straight buff anyways. At level 18, we get Superior Inspiration. It used to be the Bard Capstone. Now we get it here, and it's better in that when we roll initiative, we regain up to 2 uses of Bardic Inspiration if we have fewer than that. Some of us might not benefit from this much at all, now that we get them back on a short rest and can spend spell slots to replenish them, but it's nice to know that we'll always have at least 2 every fight. At level 19, we get Epic Boons, just like every class now. Check the timestamp, go back if you want to hear more about the Epic Boons, right? At level 20, Words of Creation, the new Bard Capstone. It says we always have Power Word Heal and Power Word Kill prepared. And when we cast either, we can target a second creature with it if they're within 10 feet. That's potentially awesome, maybe especially for Power Word Heal, I think, since Power Word Heal just straight up restores an ally to full health and cures them of all kinds of conditions, and even lets them stand if they're prone. And actually, to be fair, Power Word Kill is better now. It still has the, if they have fewer than 100 hit points, they die, no save, which, I don't know, how do I know how many hit points they have? And 100 hit points is like close to death when you're fighting enemies at level 17 plus, right? But now, if they have more than 100 hit points, they take 12d12 psychic damage. And hey, if you can hit 2 creatures, that's pretty awesome. You're pretty sure one is almost dead and you want to take a chunk out of a second? That's pretty nice. Of course, why not just Meteor Swarm? Maybe you don't want to hit your friends, I guess. This will be good sometimes. Now, I'm going to make a note about spells here that is applicable for all spellcasting classes. Any class who can cast spells gets a lot of their power from those spells, of course. And while a lot of spells have changed, and spell lists have changed, and new spells have been added, etc., trying to go over all of that here is too much for me to try to tackle with the scope of this video. I was considering doing a video on spells and another one on feats and another one on all the species changes. And in the end, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to stick to classes and subclasses and then jump into character builds, which is really what I most love doing anyways. And I'll let the other content creators tell you about all of the changes that are coming. I promise you, Chris, Treant Monk, over at Treant Monk's Temple, has incredible spell analysis, right? On the new stuff, on what's changed, so go check him out over there. Alright, so that's it for the Bard base class. On to subclasses. First up is the brand new subclass, the College of Dance, which makes monks the world over just green to the gills with envy. Maybe. At level 3, Dance bards get dazzling footwork. This says that when you're not wearing armor or using a shield, you have advantage on charisma checks that involve you dancing. I try to persuade the bartender to give me my drinks for free, and I'm tap dancing while doing so. Sweet, advantage! We have unarmored defense here, where our armor class equals 10 plus our dexterity plus our charisma. The first time anybody gets an unarmored defense where they're adding their charisma bonus. Also, when we expend a use of our bardic inspiration as part of an action, a bonus action, or a reaction, we can make an unarmed strike at the same time. And when we make unarmed strikes, we can use our dexterity for the plus to hit and damage, with the damage being equal to our bardic inspiration die, so it scales, right? And yes, for those counting, that means the bard's unarmed strike damage scales slightly faster than the monk's. Ouch. At level 6, we get 2 features. Inspiring Movement says that when an enemy ends their turn within 5 feet of us, we can use our reaction and a Bardic Inspiration die to immediately move up to half our speed, and we can have an ally do the same, neither of you provoking opportunity attacks. And of course, thanks to Dazzling Footwork, that means we can make an unarmed strike at the same time, which is kind of cool. A reliable, on-demand reaction attack. And then we get Tandem Footwork, which says that when we roll initiative, we can spend a Bardic Inspiration to add that die roll to not only our initiative roll, but that of every one of our friends within 30 feet. That's pretty dang nice. It's almost like giving your entire party the alert feat. At level 14, Leading Evasion is basically regular evasion. No damage when you make a dexterity saving throw, right? If you succeed, half damage if you fail. But you can give evasion to anyone within 5 feet of you who's making the same dexterity save. So group up when that Lich casts Meteor Swarm, right? And that's it for the Dance Bard. I'm interested. I'm not sure it will be an amazing damage dealer. I mean, they don't get extra attack, they don't get weapon masteries or anything, but still, if you're a full spellcaster, there could be some potential there. You might need some heavy multiclassing if you want to make them a real gish, right? But, well, it's possible. I'm sure I'll explore it, probably sooner rather than later. Next up, then, we've got the College of Glamour, and the art for this one is like one of my favorite pieces of art in the whole book. It is truly, truly, truly outrageous. At level 3, Beguiling Magic replaces Enthralling Performance and says that we always have Charm Person and Mirror Image prepared. Cool. And that immediately after casting an enchantment or illusion spell with a spell slot, one creature of our choice within 60 feet has to make a wisdom save or be charmed or frightened of us for 1 minute, our choice. They can try to save out of it at the end of each turn, and we can only do it once per long rest, but we can do it again by spending a Bardic Inspiration charge. And once those charges come back to us on a short rest, we can potentially be doing that a lot. Mantle of Inspiration is mostly the same as what we saw before, except that first off, it doesn't seem to work on yourself anymore since it specifies other creatures you can see. And then instead of granting allies 5 temporary hit points that scale with more Glamour Bard levels, it just grants 2 times your Bardic Inspiration die. At level 6, Mantle of Majesty is mostly the same. What's new about it is it says that we always have the command spell prepared and that we can use the feature once per long rest for free as before, or by spending a level 3 spell slot or higher. That's nice. Otherwise, it's the same. You can cast command each turn as a bonus action as though you were concentrating on a spell, and creatures charmed by you automatically fail your command, which, coupled with Beguiling Magic, might be a pretty great way to keep at least one enemy locked down anyways. At level 14, Unbreakable Majesty has changed. It says that once per short rest, as a bonus action, we can take on a Majestic Presence that, for 1 minute, causes enemies who hit us with an attack roll for the first time on a turn, they have to make a Charisma save, nice, or they miss us instead. This Glamour Bard can potentially be very hard to kill, just like my Glamour Bard tank was, I suppose. It's too bad they can't give themselves those temporary hit points anymore. Ah well. In the end, Glamour Bard, still a great subclass, probably even stronger than it used to be. Let's move on to lore. So lore bards, the quintessential bard, right? At level 3, cutting words. Bonus proficiencies are the same, and cutting words is mostly the same. The only real differences are that it no longer doesn't work on a target who can't be charmed, and that you can specifically use it after an enemy has succeeded on an attack or an ability check, not just after the roll, but before you know if it succeeded, which again always feels a little wonky to me. I was really hoping that they would go the way of Baldur's Gate 3 with this and let it work on enemy saving throws as well. Alas. At level 6, Magical Discovery. So additional Magical Secrets is now Magical Discoveries, and just like the new Magical Secrets, the 2 new spells that you learn are restricted to the Druid, Cleric, or Wizard spell lists, which is a small bummer. It does say we can replace what those spells are, though, when we gain a bard level, as long as the spell meets the requirements, so that's nice, because it means we could gain a 4th level Wizard, Cleric, or Druid spell when we hit Bard 7, for example, or a 5th one when we hit level 9, 1 level earlier than our usual Magical Secrets. At level 14, Peerless Skill is improved in that it now works for both ability checks and attack rolls, Not sure why you're making attack rolls as a lore bard, but maybe a spell attack, right? Anyways, we now can choose to add our Bardic Inspiration die after we know it fails, and if it still fails anyways, our Bardic Inspiration die isn't used. So that's nice. And that's it for the lore bard. Not a ton of changes, but some nice little tweaks and perks. Still a super solid subclass. Let's move on to the Valor Bard. Yeah, Swords Bard didn't make it, but doesn't mean you can't still use the Swords Bard. Just means that they haven't changed. The Valor Bard at level 3 gets martial training still. This ability still gives us proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons, but includes the very nice bonus that our weapon can now count as our spell focus for bard spells. Hallelujah. Stupid freaking Warcaster tax. Combat Inspiration is mostly the same, except that your ally can use it to increase their defense after getting hit. And I appreciate that they're getting rid of all of that after you see the roll, but before you know stuff, because it was all a bit silly. At level 6, we still get extra attack, but we got the Blade Singer treatment. Ooh, little Blade Singers aren't quite so special anymore, and you probably don't want to be a Swords Bard now. So yeah, now you can replace one of your attacks with a cantrip, and that's really awesome. It's super fun and pretty powerful. At level 14, Battle Magic, no change, still letting you make a bonus action weapon attack when you use your action to cast a spell. And that's it for the Bard subclasses, and that's it for Bards, our favorite all singing, all dancing craps of the world. Let's move on to the Holy of Holies, the Clerics. First up, the base class at level 1. Spells. So clerics no longer prepare a number of spells that increases based on their wisdom modifier. Just like every class now, the number of spells you can prepare is a set number that increases with more levels in that class. Simplifies things a bit. Clerics no longer get their subclass at level 1. That's crazy, right? They have to wait, just like everybody, until level 3, which is going to mix things up a bit. They do get something called Divine Order now, which basically asks, do you want to be more of a martial character or more of a spellcaster? So you get two options. The Protector option gives you proficiency with heavy armor and martial weapons. That's nice. Okay, and Thaumaturge lets you learn one extra cantrip and lets you add your wisdom modifier to your arcana and religion checks. It always felt odd to me that most clerics had such a paltry religion bonus since it's an intelligence-based skill, right? Not anymore. Unless you go for that armor and weapon proficiency thing, which it just seems like most clerics would. Just me, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, at level 2, Channel Divinity, we now get 2 charges of Channel Divinity per long rest instead of 1 per short rest, but then we get 1 more charge back every short rest. So basically 1 more use of it per day, which is nice. But you also get more uses of it per day as you gain cleric levels. But then all clerics can use it not only to turn undead, which is basically the same, except that it also incapacitates undead that failed their save against it. In practice, that basically means that they can't dash or dodge, since they still can only just try to move away from you on their turn. Also, it now ends early if you become incapacitated. But in addition to turn undead, all clerics also now get Divine Spark to use their Channel Divinity for it if they want, and it lets us use our action to heal or deal damage equal to 1d8 plus our wisdom modifier. It's not a ton of damage or healing, but it's something, and it scales with cleric levels. Nice to have a use for Channel Divinity when you're not fighting undead and don't end up needing your subclass option for it either, I guess. At level 3, we get our subclasses, right? Like I said, we'll go over those in a few minutes. At level 5, we get Seer Undead. This upgrades turn undead, akin to what we saw in Baldur's Gate 3, actually, which I liked. No more destroy undead, which was cool when you needed it, but kind of worthless otherwise. And yeah, that seems to be a theme, by the way, that Wizards is doing a good job of with, I think, in this update. Getting rid of stuff that's cool when it works or you need it, but that rarely happens and then it's worthless otherwise. So kudos to them. Now, when you turn undead, anything that fails its save will also take radiant damage equal to your wisdom modifier number of d8s. And this damage won't cause turn undead to end, so that's pretty nice. At level 7, Blessed Strikes, they kind of ported this feature over from Tasha's but bumped it up to level 7 from 8 and altered it slightly. Now you have to choose one option right when you get this feature, and you have to choose one or the other, right? Divine Strike does more damage with weapons, a d8 once per turn, and Potent Spellcasting does more damage with cleric cantrips equal to your wisdom modifier. Was there really a problem in characters benefiting from both of these things? Seems like a bit of an arbitrary change, but okay, at least we officially get a choice now. At level 10, a Divine Intervention, speaking of getting rid of things that are awesome when they work and worthless when they don't. This is just so much better. You call on your deity as an action once per day, and can cast a cleric spell of 5th level or lower without spending a spell slot or material components. Looking at you, expensive diamonds needed to resurrect someone. And that's wonderful. An extra 5th level spell slot. Perfect. This is something that we're probably going to use all the time now, instead of once in a while, and most of the time when we did use it, it didn't actually even work anyways. And then when it did, it was usually up to the DM what actually happened. At level 14, Improved Blessed Strikes just improves the Divine Strikes or Potent Spellcasting option that you took at level 7. Divine Strikes does 2d8 damage now, and Potent Spellcasting does the same amount, but also grants temporary hit points to yourself or a friend equal to twice your Wisdom modifier. Okay. At level 19, Epic Boons. Check the timestamp if you want to synopsis. At level 20, we get Greater Divine Intervention, and in true capstone fashion, it says that now when we cast Divine Intervention, we can choose the Wish spell as an option. That's what I'm talking about. Don't make the DM decide what the result of you calling on your god is. Just make your dreams come true. If you do this, though, you can't use Divine Intervention for 2d4 long rests, but totally worth it. All right, yeah, I like where the Cleric is at. Let's move on to the subclasses. First up, the maybe most quintessential of the Cleric subclasses, the Life Cleric. At level 3, we get Disciple of Life. This got a little nerf. It's basically the same in that it restores extra hit points when you heal, 2 plus the spell's level, but now it specifies that it only happens on the turn when you cast the spell, to prevent things like Goodberry and Aura of Vitality from getting big healing buffs, I'm sure. That seems a little too bad to me, but since healing generally kind of got buffed otherwise, thanks largely to healing spells, healing for more, then maybe it doesn't hurt quite as bad. Preserve Life, though, the Life Cleric's Channel Divinity feature, is essentially the same, though it specifies that a creature must be bloodied for it to work. This is a new official condition. I know a lot of tables use this anyways, but it basically is just when a creature has half of its hit points or fewer, then it's officially bloodied. Also, though, this doesn't say that it won't work on undead or constructs anymore. So that's something. Now, prepared spells. The list of spells that you always have prepared as a Life Cleric is altered slightly. Now we have Aid instead of Spiritual Weapon, which makes a lot more sense, I think. Mass Healing Word instead of Beacon of Hope at level 5. Aura of Life instead of Guardian of Faith at 7th level. And Greater Restoration instead of Raise Dead at 9th level. All told, maybe a better spell list for someone focused on healing, I think. At level 6, Blessed Healer, no real change. At level 17, we get Supreme Healing and no change either, so nothing major for the Life Cleric, other than maybe some small nerfs, it seems to me, and an arguably better spell list. Still, with the changes that the Cleric base class got, and considering that Clerics in general, and maybe Life Clerics specifically, were, I think, in a really, really strong place for what they were built to do, I don't feel too bad about it. I still think this is a great class and subclass if you want to be a good healer. All right, let's move on to the Light Domain, the nuker of nukers when it comes to clerics, and really just about any other class if you're looking for AoE damage. Anyways, level 3. The prepared spells here, the changes here include See Invisibility instead of Flaming Sphere at level 3, and Arcane Eye instead of Guardian of Faith at level 7. So a little more emphasis on illuminating things, right? Shedding light with a little less emphasis on nuking stuff. Warding Flare has changed slightly in that it now works to impose disadvantage on an attack against you or an ally. That's nice. And apparently even works against enemies who can't be blinded. Radiance of the Dawn, the Light Cleric Channel Divinity option, is mostly unchanged. It still does an area of effect from you out to 30 feet, dispelling darkness and dealing the same amount of damage to enemies. It's just not prevented from working against enemies behind total cover. At level 6, improved Warding Flare used to let us use it for allies too. Now we can already do that, right? So instead we get to regain our uses of it after a short rest. That's nice. And the recipient of its benefit gains temporary hit points equal to 2d6 plus our Wisdom modifier. I feel like temporary hit points are a lot more abundant in the new rules. It's too bad they still can't stack. Anyways, this is a nice buff. At level 17, Corona of Light was altered in that the light it emanates imposes disadvantage on radiant and fire damage spells still, but also against your Radiance of the Dawn. In exchange for that massive buff, you can only use it Wisdom modifier times per day now instead of whenever you want. That feels like an overall nerf to me. But again, for the Light Cleric, not a lot of massive changes. Some small nerfs, a decent buff, bit of a change to the spell list. But Light Clerics were really good before, and continue to be really good. Let's move on to the Trickery domain then. One of my least favorite subclasses in 5e. I never did a build in the 2014 rules for the Trickery domain. One of the only Cleric subclasses I can say that about, I think. Let's see if it got an improvement. At level 3, Blessing of the Trickster. Buffed to give advantage on stealth checks all day instead of an hour. Okay, still not great. Sorry, not sorry. So you canceled out the Paladin's disadvantage from wearing plate armor. Now they just make the stealth check regularly. They still have a +0 to stealth. Or you gave the rogue with a +8 to stealth advantage. I mean, I guess that's nice for when they roll poorly, but I don't know, it's still just kind of meh to me. Invoke Duplicity, got some buffs, thankfully. It now takes a bonus action, not an action, and blessedly doesn't require concentration. You can still cast spells as though you were in your duplicate's space, but frustratingly, it still takes a bonus action to move it every turn. I don't know. I'll force myself to do a build with it one day, now that it's better, and hopefully I'll be convinced that it's even better than I think. The spell list for Trickster Clerics is a little different. At level 3, they get Invisibility instead of Mirror Image. At 5, Hypnotic Pattern and Non-Detection instead of Blink and Dispel Magic. Okay. At level 7, they get Confusion instead of Polymorph. That feels like a downgrade, probably. So maybe a little better thanks to Hypnotic Pattern and Invisibility, I suppose. At level 6, a Trickster's Transportation replaces Cloak of Shadows and is way better. It says when you use the bonus action to move your illusion, you can teleport and swap places with it. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then at level 17, improved Duplicity is much better as well. Instead of giving us 4 illusions that kind of still don't really do much, we're told that we and our allies get advantage on our attacks if just our illusion is within 5 feet of the target. We don't need to be anymore. Also, when the illusion ends, a creature of our choice within 5 feet of it heals hit points equal to our cleric level. That's not bad. Your illusion can't be killed or dispelled or anything, so just move it next to the target you're focus firing and now everyone has advantage. No saving throw, no nothing. And a little heal. Okay, I feel like we could have gotten this earlier though, and it wouldn't be particularly overpowered. We're level 17 now, you know? There's a lot of ways to get advantage in this game. Okay, I'm gonna stop complaining. Clerics are still good, and Trickery Clerics are a lot better than they used to be. So that's something. Finally then, for Cleric Subclasses, the War domain. The Cleric Gish, I mean, when you don't have extra attack, I don't know. We'll see. At level 3, War Priest got a nice bump. The number of charges you have of it, that bonus action weapon attack, are still based on your wisdom modifier, but they reset on a short rest, not a long rest. And that is huge. Also, you don't necessarily have to take the attack action first. Also huge. And it can even be an unarmed strike if you want. So yeah, some really nice changes here, though for my money, I still think it might be better with multi-classing. Anyways, Guided Strike has been improved in that you can now use Channel Divinity to give your own attack or an ally's a +10 to hit. However, when you use it to benefit someone else's attack, it costs your reaction. Still, pretty nice if you're not necessarily trying to build a Gish here, right? The prepared spell list here, at level 3, Guiding Bolt replaces Divine Favor. At level 7, Fire Shield replaces Stone Skin. And at level 9, Steel Wind Strike replaces Flame Strike. All right. Some pretty nice changes all around, I think. At level 6, War God's Blessing used to just let your Guided Strike do what it now does by default, give the +10 to hit to an ally, right? Instead, now we are told that we can use our Channel Divinity to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon without spending a spell slot. And when we do it this way, it doesn't require concentration either. That's pretty great. Wait a sec, Spiritual Weapon already didn't require concentration. You might say, actually, you'd be wrong. It does now. Don't get mad at me. I didn't make the change. And hey, at least it doesn't still for War Clerics, potentially. Finally then, at level 17, Avatar of Battle is only changed in that it now just grants resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, regardless of whether it's magical or mundane. And I think that's basically because we're not going to see resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage anymore. All of those things have been removed from the game, as far as I can tell. But that's it for War Clerics. Yeah, they got buffed. And that's it for Clerics. All in all, still in a very solid place. Though I will say I do like the War Clerics changes a lot more than other subclasses, no doubt. No surprise, I guess, considering how much I love playing Gishy spell swords, right? But, they still don't have extra attack. I feel like you need 5 levels of a martial in order to really make a Gishy War Cleric. Maybe I proved myself wrong. Alright, let's move on to Druids, those quintessential hippie nature lovers. So, for the base class, first up, with Druids, know that by default, they now not only get proficiency in light armor and shields, not medium armor, but blessedly, in my opinion, all the verbiage about them not wearing armor made of metal is gone, and thank goodness. Sorry for the diehards, the old school, but that was just weird. They'll use weapons made of metal but not armor. Metal comes from the earth. Anyways, it always just bugged me. I know there are valid lore reasons for that being a thing, but I just never jived with them. Anyways, at level 1, 4 spells. Maybe I don't need to repeat this every time, but yeah, Druids no longer prepare a number of spells that increases based on their wisdom modifier. Just like every class now, the number of spells you can prepare is a set number that increases with more levels in that class. This is a change that I like. But then, similar to Clerics, Druids now get a Primal Order feature at level 1, which kind of lets you choose if you want to be more martially or more castery. The Magician option lets you learn an additional cantrip and add your wisdom modifier to your Arcana and Nature checks. And Warden gives you proficiency with medium armor and martial weapons, so seems like probably the better option to me. But anyways, at level 2, Wild Shape. Okay, lots of changes with Wild Shape. First off, everyone can transform as a bonus action now. Great. Second, like Channel Divinity, you can use it twice per long rest now, but you get 1 charge back after a short rest. So overall, that's less, right? It used to be twice per short rest. You do also gain more uses of it per day, though, with more Druid levels now. Also, instead of just being able to transform into any beast of 1/4 challenge rating or lower, you can choose 4 forms of beasts 1/4 challenge rating or lower that you know, and you can only use those forms. They can't have a fly speed, but they can have a swim speed right when you get this ability. When you finish a long rest, you can swap out one of those forms for something else, and when you gain more Druid levels, you can learn more forms. You can speak while wild shaped now, but you don't quite take on all of their stats like you used to. You retain your own hit points, your creature type, your class features, and your feats. Nothing about species features that I could see. Now, you do gain temporary hit points equal to your Druid level when you wild shape, but it's not like before, right? Where you had the beast's hit points, and then when those dropped to 0, you fell back into humanoid form. You just have some temporary hit points, your normal hit points, and you're a bear, or whatever. When you become incapacitated or die, you lose the wild shape. So it's definitely a lot less tanky. Everything else about wild shape is the same, though, as far as I could tell. So if I didn't mention it, probably didn't change. They also brought Wild Companion over from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, made it official here in the PHB, but better. You can spend a wild shape use to summon a familiar, like via the Find Familiar spell, but it just lasts until a long rest now. Thank goodness. Of course, familiars are weaker than they used to be. They can't take the help action now. That's probably a good thing, but it's also the thing that I most used them for, so you might not see Find Familiar show up in my builds as often as you used to, right? But I don't know, maybe that was unbalanced. If nothing else, it was probably a little wonky, and lots of tables used it a little bit differently, so whatever. At level 3, Subclass, right? We don't get it at level 2 now. We get it at 3, just like everybody. Talk about those in a minute. At level 5, we get Wild Resurgence. This is kind of nice. It says that once on each of our turns, if we have no uses of Wild Shape left, we can spend a spell slot to regain a use of it. No action required. Perhaps even better, once per day we can spend a use of our Wild Shape to regain a first level spell slot. I appreciate the flexibility. At level 7, we get Elemental Fury, similar to what Clerics get at this level. You can choose here to either gain a bonus to weapon damage or a bonus to spells. Potent Spellcasting adds your Wisdom modifier to cantrip damage, and Primal Strike adds a d8 of cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage to a weapon or wild shape beast attack. That's a nice improvement. At level 15, we get Improved Elemental Fury. This just buffs the option that you chose at level 7. Potent Spellcasting now says that any Druid cantrip with a range of 10 feet or greater now has a range of 300 feet, and that the extra damage from Primal Strike increases to 2d8. At level 18, Beast Spells replaces Timeless Body, which was mostly just kind of a ribbon feature, right? This says that we can now cast spells while wild-shaped. That's pretty awesome, and is kind of what we used to get at level 20. Partly, anyways. Again, the only exception is if the spell has a material component with a cost specified, or is a spell that consumes its material component. Level 19, we get Epic Boons just like everybody else. Check the timestamp if you want to see a synopsis of those. At level 20, the Druid Capstone Archdruid has changed so that we regain a wild shape use when we roll initiative if we don't have any left, Once per day, we can convert a number of our unspent wild shape uses into a single spell slot, with each unspent wild shape counting towards 2 spell levels. So if we burned 2 wild shape uses, we could get a 4th level spell slot, right? And then we get the same benefit that we used to have with Timeless Body, which is still fairly worthless. We age more slowly. Okay, I'll admit, on the whole, I like these changes a lot. Level 20 is a nerf though. You used to be able to wild shape unlimited times, but that wouldn't matter all that much anymore since, yeah, it was amazing because you used to take on the hit points of the beast that you changed into, right? That's kind of the big nerf here. With that gone, unlimited wild shape forms is less powerful. But aside from that nerf, everything else feels like a nice improvement to both quality of life and actual mechanical power, in my opinion. And that's the Druid. They're still a really solid class. Their spell list is still awesome. And they got some tweaks, maybe some little nerfs, but also some buffs. So I think they're in a good place. Let's move on to the subclasses. First up, we have the Circle of the Land, kind of the quintessential Druid subclass, right? At level 3, first of all, let's talk about their spell lists. Now, first of all, there are fewer landscapes that you can specialize in now as a land Druid. You just have arid, polar, temperate, and tropical. However, impressively, you can swap which land you're affiliated with after a long rest. That's really nice because each has their own set of automatically prepared spells, of course. Really quickly, Arid gets Blur, Burning Hands, Firebolt, Fireball, nice, Blight, and Wall of Stone. Polar gets Fog Cloud, Hold Person, Ray of Frost, Sleet Storm, Ice Storm, and Cone of Cold. Temperate gets Misty Step, hello, Shocking Grasp, Sleep, Lightning Bolt, Freedom of Movement, and Tree Stride, and Tropical gets Acid Splash, Ray of Sickness, Web, Stinking Cloud, Polymorph, and Insect Plague. No time for analysis here. They've all got some good ones and some less good ones, but being able to swap between them every day makes for a lot of spells that we can get access to. Land's Aid now replaces Natural Recovery here, though we'll get that feature later, and all Druids get some spell recovery now, right? So that's okay. This ability lets us spend a use of our wild shape, a common theme among all Druid subclasses now, which I appreciate, to create a 10-foot radius sphere that both harms and heals. Enemies have to make a Constitution save or take 2d6 necrotic damage, and one ally in the area heals 2d6 hit points. It's not a ton of damage or healing, but I really like that it does a little bit of both. Right? The damage and healing scale a bit with more Druid levels, an extra 1d6 at level 10 and then again at 14. At level 6, Natural Recovery moved from level 2, but it's also improved. Now it lets us cast one of our free circle spells once per day without spending a spell slot, and lets us recover spent spell slots in the same way it used to. So it's not super exciting, but still better. At level 10, Nature's Ward makes you immune to the poisoned condition, but then also damage resistance based on what landscape you're currently attuned to. Arid gives fire resistance, polar cold, temperate lightning, and tropical poison. Okay, that's cool, especially because we can swap them out, right? At level 14, Nature's Recovery is very different. Now you spend your action and a use of your wild shape to cause spectral trees and vines to appear in a 15-foot cube. They stay for 1 minute, and you and your allies have half cover while in the area, which, as a reminder, is +2 to your armor class and your dexterity saving throws, and all of your allies also get resistance to the damage that you get from Nature's Ward, right? It's pretty nice. It doesn't require concentration, and it can be moved up to 60 feet each turn as a bonus action. It used to just make it harder for beasts and plants specifically to attack you. So again, getting away from the great when it works but worthless otherwise features. And I'm so glad for that. So all in all, I really like the changes to land Druids here, especially the increased versatility they get. Let's move on to a Circle of the Moon, that probably most popular and most controversial of Druid subclasses. At level 3, Circle Forms. This got a nice buff to make up to the survivability nerf that Wild Shape generally got hit with. Circle Forms still lets us transform into beasts 1/3 of our challenge rating rounded down, but also adds a bump to our armor class equal to 13 plus our wisdom modifier, which is pretty decent, and gives us a number of temporary hit points equal to 3 times our druid level instead of just equal to our druid level. Considering the hit point bump and that we don't drop out of Wild Shape when those temporary hit points run out or anything, this might be better overall for those who want to transform into a beast and do most of their fighting that way, right? I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about multiclassing potential here especially. As for circle spells, now, I mean, Moon Druids didn't used to get any additional always prepared spells like the other subclasses. With 2024, they not only get some, but we're even told that we can cast them while wild-shaped. Awesome! At level 3, we get Cure Wounds, Moonbeam, and Starry Wisp. This is a new cantrip that does a little damage and makes an enemy light up. At level 5, we get Conjure Animals, the new and improved Conjure Animals, which is so much better. I don't have time to go into it, right? But like, it's not just create a bunch of creatures that potentially clog up the battlefield and slow down gameplay. It's now like a thing that you can move around that does damage to enemies when they get near it. At 7, you get Fount of Moonlight. This is another new spell that gives radiant resistance, makes your attacks do more damage, and can potentially blind enemies. And at level 7, they get Mass Cure Wounds. Some solid all-around buffs to our level 3 features. The real question for Moon Druids, of course, is what are the CR 1, 2, and 3 beasts going to look like when the new monster manual comes out? Alas, we will have to wait and see for that. But at level 6, we get improved circle forms. In addition to letting us transform into CR 2 beasts now, at this level we can have our wild shape attacks deal radiant or their regular damage, which will be nice for overcoming resistance. Again, we're not going to see, I don't think, like resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage like we used to. We also get to now add our wisdom modifier to our constitution saving throws. That's kind of huge. And no need to start level 1 in a different class, right? To get con save proficiency, or take the resilient feat for Moon Druids. That's especially great for our concentration checks, of course. At level 10, Moonlight Step replaces Elemental Wild Shape, which bums me out a bit, if I'm being honest. Being able to transform into an Earth Elemental, that was my favorite, was pretty dang cool. This now tells us that wisdom modifier times per day, we can teleport with a bonus action and then get advantage on our next attack roll this turn. Kind of like the Shadow Monk's Shadow Step. Pretty cool, pretty useful. We can also do this more often if we spend a level 2 spell slot or higher, so sure, a buffed Misty Step, right? But since it's not a spell, we can do it while wild shape. Better than being an elemental? I'm skeptical. But thanks to the buffs that we've seen and one that's coming, I think I'm okay with it. Because yeah, at level 14, we now get Lunar Form instead of 1,000 forms, which really wasn't that great in my opinion. But this now lets us do an extra 2d10 of damage when we hit with a wild shape attack once per turn. Okay, I mean, that's like a free smite once per turn, and tells us that when we teleport with Lunar Step, we can bring a friend within 10 feet with us. Cool. Pretty useful, pretty hard hitting, and thanks to the way our survivability scales with Druid level and Wisdom modifier, we could be fairly tanky here. We'll see how well our offense scales when we get a gander at the beasts from the new monster manual, but overall, I think I'm on board with the new Moon Druid. It might be a little less powerful than it used to be right at level 2, right? But I think it's going to scale better. Of course, this is going to depend on what the beasts look like. But even if they were the same, you're still better off than where you used to be with the 2014 rules, in most ways. Next up, we've got another brand new subclass, the Circle of the Sea. And this might end up being my favorite Druid subclass, I think. I don't know. Let's jump in. I did use it in a build. Check it out there, the Hand of the Open Sea, I think I called it. It was kind of a playtest build, but not a lot has changed from the way the Druid of the Sea worked in the playtest compared to the way it works in official release. So at level 3, we get circle spells. Of course, the circle spells for Sea Druids are at level 3, Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, Ray of Frost, Shatter, and Thunder Wave. At level 5, Lightning Bolt and Water Breathing. At level 7, Control Water and Ice Storm. And at level 9, Conjure Elemental and Hold Monster. Not a bad list there. Wrath of the Sea at this level lets us use a bonus action and a use of our wild shape to extend Ocean Spray from us 5 feet in every direction, so not a big emanation. It lasts 10 minutes and lets us use a bonus action to force an enemy within that Ocean Spray to make a Constitution save or take a number of d6s in damage equal to our Wisdom modifier and be pushed up to 15 feet away from us. That's pretty awesome, The Constitution save gives me pause. I wish it would do half damage on a save or something. But generally, I really love this ability. At level 6, Aquatic Affinity simply causes our Ocean Spray Wrath of the Sea to grow to 10 feet from us instead of 5, and gives us a swim speed equal to our speed. At level 10, Stormborn, which continues to enhance our Wrath of the Sea. They're really leaning into this feature. While that's active, we can now fly. Everybody's flying, like I said. And we have resistance to cold, lightning, and thunder damage. Great. At level 14, Oceanic Gift is pretty cool. It just lets you put your Wrath of the Sea around another creature instead of around yourself. But they get all the same benefits that it was giving you. And if you spend 2 charges of Wild Shape, lets it put it around both yourself and them. That's pretty awesome. One question I do have. If we put it around someone else, do they use their bonus action to push someone away, or do we? I assume they do. And when they do they use our own spell save DC? That would be my guess, but I do think they could clarify that. We might need to get a tweet from Jeremy Crawford on that one. Anyways, that's the Circle of the Sea Druid. I love it. I especially love it with some multi-classing and finding ways to make good use of pushing, which the Druids just kind of innately have a lot of now, so maybe you don't even need multi-classing to make this a pretty decent little cheese grater. And then we have the 4th and final subclass, the Circle of the Stars. My favorite Druid subclass, prior to the Sea Druids anyways being a thing. And I'm really happy to see this in here, though it really doesn't see a lot of change from when we saw it last. At level 3, Star Map is almost totally unchanged. We still get Guidance and Guiding Bolt and can cast it for free. It's just Wisdom modifier times per day instead of Proficiency bonus times per day. Starry Form, as far as I can tell, there's no change here from what we previously had. Bonus action to use Wild Shape to take on an Archer, Chalice, or Dragon form that are functionally identical. At level 4, Cosmic Omen is again almost exactly the same. Wheel or Woe to add or subtract a d6 to a die roll with your reaction. The only difference is you can do it Wisdom modifier times per day instead of Proficiency bonus times per day. Seems like they're really getting away from Proficiency bonus times per day on a lot of stuff in the new book, at least when it's tied to a class or a subclass feature, maybe not if it's a species thing. I wonder if that's mostly to try and curb multi-class tipping. It won't completely get rid of it, but it might reduce it on some builds where you'd be really mad if you tried to pick up a low-level feature but didn't necessarily have a good ability score modifier for that class, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, at level 10, Twinkling Constellation is again identical to what we had. More damage or healing from Archer and Chalice forms, Flight and Hover with Dragon, and you can change which one you're using at the start of each turn. At level 14, Full of Stars. Same goes for the final feature here, which just gives you resistance to bludgeoning and piercing and slashing when you're in your starry form. So in the end, I might not be all that excited about Stars Druid getting included here. I mean, it's fun that it's in the player's handbook now, and I love the new art, but since we use features from Tasha's at our table, I could already use and play with this subclass, and since they didn't really change much with it, I might have preferred to see something else that could have used a bit of a revamp, you know? Ah well, all good. Druids look better than ever now, especially because some of their new spells, which I'm not going to go into on this video, but you can find them. Again, check Treant Monk if you don't check anywhere else. I bet Dungeon Dudes will have stuff on it, and a slew of others, I'm sure. Okay, I think I'm going to end things there for the day. I'm going to go home. I'm gonna get some sleep, I'm gonna take a shower, and I will come back and record a few more tomorrow. All right, we're ready for part 2. 8 classes to go. I'm refreshed. I've had some sleep. I've had some food. I'm ready to jump into part 2. Let's keep it going. So next up we have, what is apparently my favorite class in D&D, if you judge by how often I use them in my builds, at least. I honestly would not call them my favorite class, but it might have been historically my favorite class to dip. Around half of my builds seem to have at least one level of fighter, usually thanks to the defensive boons you get by starting their armor and shield and constitution saving throw proficiency, right? 2 levels if I'm building for burst damage thanks to the strength of action surge. And in case you were wondering how I know that, it's because I have a table of contents that I link to in the video description of every video, right? And it just breaks down every class with a little description, as well as the number of levels that I took in each class and subclass for the build, what its purpose was, right? Sustained damage, burst damage, etc. And yeah, check that out. If you've not seen it, it can be a nice resource if you're trying to find the next video to watch or the next character to build. Anyways, let's see if the changes that they have made for 2024 will encourage me to go a different route in the future, or keep doing what I've always done. I'm also curious to know if we get more reasons to stay in the class longer once we start, as opposed to multi-classing into usually a spellcaster class, right? Okay, let's dive in. At level 1, you still get a fighting style, but they've changed it so that fighting styles are all considered feats now. If I'm being honest, I'm not 100% sure why they did this. Maybe it's just more efficient to tell classes, hey, you get a fighting style feat and move on, rather than say, hey fighters, you get these feats, paladins get these ones, rangers get these ones. What's nice is that it's a buff actually to paladins and rangers, since they have access to all fighting styles now. Anyways, they do let you swap out that fighting style feat every time you gain a fighter level now as well, which is super nice. As for what those fighting style feats are, the following are for all intents and purposes unchanged. Archery, blind fighting, which yeah is official in the PHB now, defense, dueling, interception, thrown weapon fighting, two-weapon fighting, and unarmed fighting. The only ones they've really changed are protection, which got a nice buff in that it still lets you use your reaction to interpose your shield on an attack made against an ally within 5 feet, causing the attack to have disadvantage, but now all attacks against that ally are made with disadvantage until the start of your next turn, so long as you stay within 5 feet. That's freaking awesome. It makes you feel like a real tank or a protector. It's like a soft taunt that always works, at least for one ally, and I love it. The other one that got changed is Great Weapon Fighter, and this is a real head scratcher for me because they took what was, I think, the worst fighting style of all and somehow made it even worse, I think. Now, when you roll a 1 or a 2 for damage with a weapon you're holding with 2 hands, it just counts as a 3, no more reroll. So on a 2d6 weapon, that's an average of 1 point better. On a d12, it's an average of 0.25 more damage. Yikes. I really am flabbergasted by this. Surely they knew that this feat was mechanically really weak, right? And I mean, Great Weapon Master got nerfed pretty hard, so are they just sick of heavy weapons being better than other melee weapons? I don't know. It's so odd. Anyways, people rarely took this fighting style before. I suppose now they'll just continue not to use it. Maybe the saddest thing for me is that they got rid of Superior Technique, the one that let you learn a Battle Master maneuver. That was new in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I was hoping that that would make it to the player's handbook here, and maybe even that they change it from a D6 to a D8, because the D6 was always weird, but oh well. Also at Fighter 1, we still get Second Wind. It's mostly the same at this level, but now we get 2 uses of it per day and recover 1 use on a short rest. So basically 1 more use of it per day for now. We gain more uses of it as we gain fighter levels. We also get more ways to use it with more fighter levels instead of just healing. So it becomes a more interesting resource now, which is cool. We'll get into it as we go. Fighters get Weapon Mastery at level 1. We've already discussed Weapon Masteries. Check the timestamp under the Barbarian discussion, right? So I'm not going to repeat myself here. They are awesome and make martial characters both more powerful and more interesting and versatile, and I'm a big fan. The difference between fighters and others who get the ability is that fighters get 3 kinds of weapons to have mastery in right off the bat and gain more with fighter levels. At level 2, we still get Action Surge, but there is one big, huge, massive change to it, and it's that the extra action you get once per short rest can be used for anything except to take the magic action. For those who don't know, they've gotten a little more precise in naming different types of actions with this player's handbook. So using your action to cast a spell, or use a magic item, or use some other sort of magical feature, maybe from your class or subclass, is now called taking the magic action. And any feature that requires us to use the magic action will specify as much. Thus, we are a lot more limited now on what we can do with Action Surge, and it seems to be intended to kind of keep casters from being tempted to dip fighters so they can cast 2 spell-slotted spells in the same turn like they could before. And I guess this might mean that there's no longer a way to do this in D&D 5e if we're using 2024 rules, right? Cast 2 spells with a spell slot in the same turn. I'm not complaining. It's probably a change for the best, and yeah, it should mean seeing a lot fewer fighter dips from me going forward, though there still will be plenty of them on Burst and Nova builds that are weapon users, as well as for builds that are looking for easy weapon mastery, strong defensive features. So yeah, I still think we'll see a fair amount of fighter dips. We also get at this level Tactical Mind. This is a new feature. It gives us our first new use for Second Wind. It says that when we fail an ability check, we can spend a use of Second Wind, roll a d10, and add that to the total, potentially succeeding instead. Best of all, if the check fails, you don't lose the Second Wind charge, so use it with abandon if the ability check is important, right? Really cool. At level 3, we get our Fighter Subclass still. We'll go over those in a few minutes. At level 4, we still get an ability score or feat, just like everybody. I'll just mention that fighters still get the most feats of any class, getting an extra one at 6 and 14, like before. At level 5, extra attack is unchanged, but we get another new feature here called Tactical Shift. This buffs Second Wind some more, saying that when we use it as a bonus action, whether to heal or whether for something else that we can get later, we can also move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Nice. At level 9, Indomitable. That least favorite fighter feature of mine. What was up with level 9 for barbarians and fighters? Both crappy features previously. It is way better now. Hooray. Now, when we fail a save, once per day, we can add our fighter level to the result of the roll. And that is going to mean turning most failed saves into successes. So much better. And we still gain additional uses of this per day at levels 13 and 17. We also get Tactical Master here, and that says that when we attack with a weapon whose mastery property we can use, we can replace that mastery with either push, sap, or slow for that specific attack. It's pretty dang cool. Maybe we have topple, but they're already prone. Push them instead, right? Maybe we have cleave, but there's no second target standing next to them. Slow them down instead. I love the versatility and options this provides. It's so fun. At level 11, never fear, fighters still get that supreme third attack when they take the attack action, right? I like to call it extra attack. But at level 13, they get yet another new feature. Do fighters get more new features than any other class in this version of the Player's Handbook? I think they might. Anyways, this is studied attacks. It says that if we miss an attack against an enemy, our next attack against them has advantage before the end of our next turn. So great. I mean, get yourself a Vex weapon and just always have advantage after the first attack every round. Maybe? I don't know. At level 19, just like everyone else, we get epic boons. Again, check the timestamp from our initial discussion on the Barbarian if you want to see a little breakdown on those. And then at level 20, yes, the capstone is still extra attack. Hasn't changed and is still amazing. And that's the core fighter. I really love what they've done. Added a ton of versatility and utility and options to make the class that's often thought of as pretty boring or vanilla a lot more interesting and fun. Not to mention just a straight up power increase pretty much across the board, with the exception maybe of Action Surge. So let's see what they did with the subclasses. First up, Battlemaster, the favorite subclass, I think, by most 5e veterans. At level 3, we still get Student of War. It still gives us proficiency in an artisan's tool of your choice, but now also adds proficiency in another skill of your choice that fighters can get proficiency in at level 1. So just a little more utility. As for combat superiority, the rules here are all exactly the same. The same number of maneuvers learned, same number of dice, etc. As far as the maneuvers themselves are concerned, they are all the same as before with these exceptions. Brace is just gone. Dang it. I love that one for getting me more reliable reaction attacks. I guess they didn't want to step on the toes of Polearm Master, maybe, especially now that the feat got worse. A Commander Strike doesn't require you to use a bonus action anymore. That's nice, but otherwise is the same. Evasive Action has you use your bonus action to disengage and then gives you the AC bump not until you stop moving, but until your next turn. So much better. Grappling Strike is gone, probably because grappling is considered an unarmed strike now, right? And this might have stepped on the toes of the Tavern Brawler feat. Lunging Attack is totally different. You take a bonus action to take the dash action, and if you move at least 5 feet before hitting with a weapon attack, you add the superiority die in damage. Better, I think. Parry now allows you to reduce the damage by the superiority die plus your dex or strength mod, your choice. I appreciate that. Precision attack language is just simplified, stating that when you miss, you can use this to try and hit. Quick Toss is just gone, and that also makes me super sad. It was one of my favorites to find ways to build around, like with the Needler or the Bladesinger Nova builds. Why take it away, Wizards? Come on. Rally is improved in that the temporary hit points it grants equal superiority die plus half your fighter level rounded down. No more charisma. And that's it for the maneuvers. No new maneuvers. They just kind of cut some and changed a few others. A little bit sad overall, I think. But oh well. Some of those got buffed, so maybe in the end it's kind of a wash. At level 7, the Know Your Enemy feature got a change that's a lot more useful in combat. You still get to know stuff about others, but instead of needing to study them for a minute, once a day you can just spend a bonus action, or if you want to do it more than once a day, a superiority die. I love that. Now, the info available for you to know is less, but still useful. Any immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities they may have. I have a feeling that we're going to see a much more varied approach to resistances and vulnerabilities for enemies in the new rules and the new monster manual. I certainly hope so, at least. And if that proves to be the case, then this gets even more potent, right? At level 10, improved combat superiority, there's no change. Your superiority dice become D10s now, and at 18, they're D12s. At level 15, relentless. This is so much better than it used to be. And it really encourages me to just want to stick Battlemaster. Once per turn, we can now use a D8 for a maneuver, and it doesn't cost us a superiority die. That's freaking awesome. Once per turn. This is the kind of scaling that all classes need. Wizards, thank you. And that's it for the Battlemaster. Yeah, the biggest changes came from the changes to their maneuvers, I think, but in addition, they got some nice little tweaks and improvements. So in the end, the favorite subclass might continue to be so. Next up, Champion, meaning we go from one of the most beloved fighter subclasses to the most bemoaned. Champions have historically been the most vanilla subclass of the most vanilla class. Let's see how they've been improved. At level 3, improved critical, there's no change, but remarkable athlete, okay, we already get an improvement, giving us what used to be the level 7 ability right at level 3, and making it better. This now gives us advantage on athletics checks and initiative rolls. Nice. Also, when we get a critical hit, which happens twice as often for us, right, we can move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Not bad. At level 7, we still get an additional fighting style, no change, except that we get it at 7 now instead of 10, so everything's kind of getting moved up, right? That's cool. Now at level 10, we get a new feature, Heroic Warrior. This says that whenever we start our turn without inspiration, we get inspiration. Dang, that feels really potent. Now, inspiration no longer grants advantage, right? It just gives you a reroll if you fail a thing, but for most builds, that's actually going to be even better. And now we get that once a round. You're not going to be missing all that often on the champion, and you're going to be critting a lot more. At level 15, we still get superior critical, no change, critting on an 18 or better now. And then at level 18, Survivor still lets us heal at the start of our turn in the same way, but now in addition we both have advantage on death saves, and also when we roll an 18 or better we critically succeed on our death saves, which heals you 1 hit point, meaning you're back in the fight, right? Okay, yeah, this version of the champion is way better. It might not bring as much variety as other subclasses, but combined with the base fighter improvements and weapon masteries, I think it could be a powerful and fun character. Maybe especially if I could get some Divine Smite in there somewhere for even bigger and more frequent crits. Okay, moving on to the Eldritch Knight, what many thought was the most powerful fighter subclass, arguably outside of the Echo Knight, which a lot of people couldn't play with, right? Because, I mean, they get spells, and that has not changed. At level 3, we still get spell casting. The rules here are largely unchanged. They still get spells and spell slots like a 1/3 caster, right? But there is one massive change here, and it's that we're no longer restricted to the abjuration and evocation schools of magic. With those spells, hallelujah, the shackles have come off. Now we just get to pick any wizard spells we want for all of our spells. Perfect. Weapon Bond is now called War Bond, but it's functionally the same. At level 7, War Magic, in addition to getting second level spells at this level, War Magic is vastly improved. It's basically, again, the Blade Singer's extra attack, letting us replace one of our attacks with a cantrip that has a casting time of 1 action. Much, much better. So yeah, now we're seeing that on 3 potential classes, right? The Valor Bard, the Blade Singer, which you can still use as long as your table allows you to use previous material, and here the Eldritch Knight. Though Eldritch Knights get it 1 level later than those other 2, they get regular extra attack 1 level earlier, right? At level 10, there's no change to Eldritch Strike, but its potential is a lot more potent now that we can cast a cantrip as part of the attack action, I think. No change to Arcane Charge at level 15, and at level 18, improved War Magic is, well, improved. Now it says that when we take the attack action, we can replace 2 of our attacks, and remember, we have 3 now, with a 1st or 2nd level spell with a casting time of an action. That's fun. And keep in mind that there's no prohibition against still replacing 1 of our attacks with a cantrip. So we could potentially, say, cast a 2nd level spell and a cantrip all with our action. That feels pretty unique. We still have our bonus action and potentially action surge. And I'm just thinking out loud here, but I said earlier that there was no way to cast 2 leveled spells on your turn thanks to the action surge nerf. But if we action surge, take the attack action, and can replace 1 of those attacks with a spell, maybe this is the only way that that can be done now. Granted, you're capped at 1st or 2nd level spells, but still, I don't know, that's cool. It's fun, it's unique. I'm a little sad that it came so late in our career here, but whatever. It's a nice capstone. And that's it for the Eldritch Knight. Let's move on to the 4th and final subclass. They announced this a while ago, but some of you may have missed that and will be surprised by this. We are getting the Psy Warrior in the player's handbook officially, and I love that because it is such a great subclass. But similar to a lot of these, we kind of had a version of this before and now they're getting put in the player's handbook. There's not a ton of changes here. At level 3, Psionic Power, 1 small change is that it no longer requires us to use a bonus action to recover our once per short rest psionic energy die, but otherwise the number and size of the dice are unchanged, and the powers that we get, Protective Field, Psionic Strike, and Telekinetic Movement, are pretty much unchanged as well. At level 7, a Telekinetic Adept, again, no changes to the new ways we get to use our psionic energy die here. Psi-Powered Leap and Telekinetic Thrust, pretty much the same. At level 10, Guarded Mind, no change. At level 15, Bulwark of Force, no change. At level 18, Telekinetic Master, no change. So no real changes here to speak of except for the 1 little recover a die, not having to use your bonus action anymore thing. And that's it for the fighter. All things considered, they are undoubtedly looking better than they ever have, and I'm really curious to put some builds together to see how they fare now, both with and without some multi-classing. It's gonna be fun. But then we come to my actual favorite class in D&D, the Monk. And if you cannot tell by the look on my face, I am so happy with the way that the Monk has been improved for 2024. I would say that the Monks got the most love out of any class. And to be fair, they were in need of the most love, in my opinion. Maybe I'm biased, but I think someone looking at it objectively would probably agree with me 9 times out of 10. And yeah, they just got a lot of love. So let's go over the details. At level 1, proficiencies now include simple weapons and martial weapons that have the light property. This gives us a few more options now for what can constitute monk weapons, and that's great. Then there's martial arts. So first up, it's important to note that martial arts scales slightly better. Our martial arts die starts at a D6, it goes to a D8 at 5, a D10 at 11, a D12 at 17. Also, we can now just take an unarmed strike as a bonus action, no need to take the attack action first. And this is honestly one of the best changes, I think, especially for open hand monks. We'll get into that, but really I love being able to just make a bonus action attack without it being tied to anything, and being able to do it first on our turn if there's a good reason to do so. It opens up a lot more possibilities and versatility for us, depending on subclass, maybe depending on multi-classing, right? Aside from that, no real changes to martial arts. At level 2, instead of ki, we now get monk's focus. Not discipline points, focus points. And honestly, while I prefer ki to either, focus is way better than discipline. That's what they were using in the playtest, right? We still get the same number of them per monk level. They still reset on a short rest, but everything we can do with them has been improved. We can now flurry of blows without needing to take the attack action, just like, making an unarmed strike with a bonus action, right? Again, that's awesome. And Patient Defense and Step of the Wind let us disengage or dash for free as a bonus action now, and only cost a focus point to also disengage and dodge in the case of Patient Defense, or disengage and dash in the case of Step of the Wind. Such a great quality of life improvement, and it just feels like you're better than like a subpar rogue, right? Uncanny Metabolism might be my favorite new level 2 buff though. There's a new feature that says once per day when you roll initiative, you can just regain all focus points and heal for 1 roll of your martial arts die plus your monk level. That is just so huge. And I'm so glad they bumped it to level 2 here from level 7 where they originally had it in the playtest. It makes early and mid-game monk so much better. At level 3, you now get deflect attacks instead of deflect missiles. So it used to only work on ranged attacks, right? Now it just says as long as the attack coming in includes bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, you spend a reaction to reduce it by d10 plus your dexterity plus your monk level. If you reduce it to 0, you can redirect that with a focus point, even a melee attack. But in that case, when you are redirecting it, it has to be towards someone within 5 feet of you. But then in order to avoid that attack, you're not like making an attack roll. The enemy that you're trying to hit just makes a dexterity save, or they take 2 times your martial arts die plus your dexterity bonus. That is so awesome. It really increases monk defensiveness and is a potential bump to the damage that you can do as well. We also then at level 3 still get subclasses. We'll talk about those in a minute. At level 5, I am sad to announce that Stunning Strike pretty much got nerfed. It got a minor buff too, but overall I'd consider it a nerf. Now we can only use it once per turn instead of any time we hit, right? And when we stun the enemy, they're only stunned until the beginning of our next turn instead of the end of our next turn, which is a pretty big deal. Now, if the enemy makes their save against it, we're told that our next attack has advantage and their speed is halved until the beginning of our next level. And this bums me out because in the playtest they had the target taking damage if they saved. And this felt to me like a little bit of a gut punch. It's tough, right? To give somebody something cool and then have to like take it away. That always feels bad. And so, yeah, I feel bad right now. To be fair, I mean, I appreciate that they didn't want to get to a place where you were like hoping that an enemy made their save against an ability, right? Because there could be times where an enemy was almost dead and you're like, oh, I'm going to Stunning Strike. I really hope they fail so that I can do some damage to them and kill them. That feels sort of counterintuitive and weird. But just kind of slowing an enemy and giving you advantage, I mean, it's better than nothing. It's better than what it was, right? Where if they made their save, sucks. But it just kind of makes me feel like I'm probably going to go back to not actually using Stunning Strike all that often unless I feel pretty confident that the enemy is going to fail. And now that we can only try to Stunning Strike once per turn, it almost feels like a bit of a trap to try and use it in a lot of fights. Unless it turns out that Constitution saving throws aren't as high in the new Monster Manual as they are currently. So yeah, I mean, considering all the other buffs that monks got, right, I'm still thrilled with where we are. I just wish that they would have stuck with the version of Stunning Strike that they had in the playtest, I think. Anyways, at level 6, we get Empowered Strikes. It's similar, but now it just says unarmed strikes can deal force damage or the regular damage. Again, resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage is going away, at least by all indication. At level 9, the feature is called Acrobatic Movement instead of Unarmored Movement Improvement, but it's functionally the same. At level 10, we now get Heightened Focus instead of Purity of Body. This gives some nice buffs to all of our base class ways to use focus. My favorite of which is that Flurry of Blows now does 3 unarmed strikes. Finally, it feels like monks are kind of getting back to this place where I think they have been in the past and probably should be, where they are just like, a flurry of blows. They're making potentially as many or more attacks every turn than any other character. I know there's exceptions there, but still, 3 unarmed strikes with a bonus action. That feels awesome. What's more, Patient Defense now adds 2 rolls of our martial arts die in temporary hit points when we use it, and Step of the Wind lets you bring a willing friend who's larger or smaller with you as you're dashing, right? And neither of you provoke opportunity attacks. That's pretty awesome and brings kind of some nice utility and even kind of support feel to the monk that they didn't have before. We also get self-restoration here, and it kind of replaces the old level 7 stillness of mind, but it's better. At the end of the turn, you can just end the charmed, frightened, or poisoned condition on yourself. There's no action required, so it should get rid of any questions of like, can I use this? I don't know. I'm not in control of my character kind of stuff, right? Also, it tells us we don't suffer exhaustion from not eating or drinking. At level 13, a Tongue of Sun and Moon was replaced with Deflect Energy. Thank goodness. This lets you use deflect attacks on any damage type, not just bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. This is just super fun. Now, it still has to be an attack, right? So you can't deflect a fireball or whatever, but you could deflect a scorching ray. It's so cool and just feels really like, I don't know, at one with the universe monk-tastic feature. I just love it. At level 14, Diamond Soul is now called Disciplined Survivor, but it is essentially the same. Still really good. Proficiency in all saves, and it lets you spend a focus point to re-roll a failed save. At level 15, the really bad Timeless Body has been replaced with Perfect Focus, which is basically an improved version of the old monk capstone, Perfect Self, which was kind of bad. This says when you roll initiative, you regain up to 4 focus points if you have less than that. Not bad. There will be plenty of times when this does nothing for us, but when we really need it, we'll be glad to have it. At level 18, Superior Defense replaces Empty Body. This lets us spend 3 focus points to gain resistance to all damage except force damage for 1 minute. No concentration, no action or bonus action. When you've got 18 focus points, giving up 3 doesn't hurt much. A really nice buff to monk survivability, especially because now we can have both resistance and deflect any incoming attack, right? At level 19, we get an epic boon just like everybody else. Check the timestamp if you want a little synopsis of what those are. And then at level 20, the monk capstone is Body and Mind, and this just buffs our dexterity and our wisdom by 4. So good. So that's it for the base monk subclass. By and large, tons of awesome buffs and improvements, and I love it. Let's see what they did with the subclasses. First up, we've got the Warrior of Mercy. We first saw this subclass in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it was previously the best monk subclass. I think it's pretty tough to argue otherwise, at least mechanically. But I got some bad news. This version of the Mercy Monk only sees one real change, and it's a nerf. It comes to us at level 11, the Flurry of Healing and Harm feature. It used to be usable once per turn with no other limit other than your key points, right? Since you have to be using Flurry of Blows. Now it can only be used wisdom modifier times per day. Boo! Boo! And that's the only real difference I could find here. So they included it in the player's handbook for the sole purpose of nerfing it, it feels like. I mean, of course, yes, and to make it maybe more official for people who couldn't use Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but yeah, this makes me sad. And again, they buffed the base class by quite a bit. And yeah, this was the strongest monk subclass before, so maybe it was warranted, but I can't help but be a little annoyed here. Let's move on to Warrior of Shadow. At level 3, Shadow Arts now just gives us the Minor Illusion and Darkness spells, so you might think that that's a nerf, but you can now cast Darkness with only 1 focus point, and without any spell components, which is so awesome. Not even a verbal component, just bam, instant darkness, with no warning. You can see inside of it as well, and at the start of every turn, you can move it within 60 feet. You gain dark vision if you didn't have it, or extend the range of your dark vision by 60 feet if you do. So yeah, it's kind of like you just get darkness, but they really buffed what you can do with the darkness, and they're kind of leaning into that, which makes sense, right? You're a shadow monk. At level 6, there's no change to Shadow Step, but being able to see in your darkness spell is going to make this a lot easier to use. At level 11, improved Shadow Step replaces Cloak of Shadows that would give you some limited invisibility. Instead, you can now spend a focus point when you Shadow Step to make it so that you don't have to teleport into or out of dim light or darkness. You can also get a free unarmed strike immediately after teleporting, which I love. It's like a cool blink strike and makes giving up your bonus action, which you'd usually be using for an unarmed strike or flurry of blows, a lot less painful, right? Now you can both teleport and still hit somebody. At level 17, Cloak of Shadows replaces Opportunist and says that when we're in dim light or darkness, we can spend 3 focus points to become invisible for 1 minute or until we're in bright light. Attacking does not break this, so it's kind of like improved invisibility. We can also pass through occupied spaces while in this form, though at half speed, and can flurry of blows without spending focus points. So this is really powerful, especially if you've got your darkness bubble going, right? And I will say that as much as I love the way that they're kind of leaning into this darkness, as someone who's been guilty of building around and even playing at the table with the darkness spell, this can potentially be problematic, right? Most of us know putting a 30-foot sphere of darkness down on the battlefield when your allies can't necessarily see into it can create some problems. So I don't know. Definitely a subclass that you're going to want to like talk with your friends about before the campaign starts in a session 0, right? Maybe make sure that your Warlock buddy picks up Devil's Sight, or that your fighter gets Blind Sight as a fighting style. In that case, yeah, then it becomes even better, right? So I don't know. I like it. I'm just a little nervous about it. Anyways, let's move on to the next subclass, Warrior of Elements. The most drastically altered subclass, right? This was previously the Way of 4 Elements. Everything here is different. We used to get a bunch of spell options that would cost us too much ki, in my opinion, and few of them were all that good. Now, instead, first up, at level 3, we get Elemental Attunement. This tells us that at the start of our turn, we can spend a focus point to imbue ourselves with elemental energy. No bonus action required to do this. Then, for the next 10 minutes, your unarmed strikes reach 10 feet further, so 15 feet total, and whenever you hit with an unarmed strike, you can do elemental damage instead of bludgeoning, so acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder. And force the target to make a strength save or be moved 10 feet towards or away from you. Every time. No size restriction. Incoming monk cheese grater, right? You also learn the Elementalism cantrip. This is a new spell that's mostly for show, similar to Prestidigitation or Thaumaturgy, but with fire and earth and water. Regardless, total avatar bender stuff. Awesome. At level 6, we get Elemental Burst. This says for 2 focus points and your action, you can have a burst of damage in a 20-foot radius sphere, same as Fireball, right? But it can be any elemental damage type. They have to make a dex save or take 3 rolls of your martial arts die and half on a save. So that's only 3d8, which is nowhere near Fireball, but could still be useful to clear out waves of weak minions and things. Situationally useful, pretty cool, even if you don't use it a ton. At level 7, we get Stride of the Elements. This says that when your elemental attunement is active, right, you have a fly speed and a swim speed equal to your speed. Like I said, everybody's getting flight these days. And hey, it's still really good and powerful. At level 17, the elemental capstone here is Elemental Epitome. Again, while elemental attunement is active, you get resistance to 1 type of elemental damage, and you can change it every turn. Also, when you Step of the Wind, you get 20 feet more move speed, and can do damage equal to your martial arts die to any creature you get within 5 feet of an elemental damage type of your choice. Now, any creature of your choice means multiple enemies. Every enemy can only take this damage once per turn, so you can't like move away from them, come back, move away from them, come back, and keep doing damage, right? This is similar then to the Ashardalon Stride spell, which is so fun and cool, and this is awesome. Finally, once per turn here, it says that when you hit with an unarmed strike, you can do an extra martial arts die in damage. Altogether, and combined with the base monk buffs, a vast improvement to this subclass, right? I am really excited to play with this one. Finally, then for monks. Previously, my favorite subclass conceptually, some might say it's the most boring, but the Warrior of the Open Hand. It's just kind of the most kung fu, I suppose. At level 3, open hand technique, the biggest change really is that we can now flurry of blows before taking the attack action if we want, right? That came to us from the base class. Otherwise, this feature is pretty similar to the 2014 rules in that when we hit an enemy with a strike from Flurry of Blows, we can addle to prevent them from making opportunity attacks, push to force a strength saving throw or push them 15 feet away from us, or topple to force a dexterity save or knock them prone. And yeah, this is great because it means we can potentially knock them prone at the beginning of our turn now and enjoy advantage on the rest of our attacks that turn if they're prone, right? At level 6, we get Wholeness of Body, still lets us heal ourselves with a bonus action now for a martial arts die plus our wisdom modifier. But we can only do it wisdom modifier times per day. It's better, but it still feels a little underwhelming to me. Still, it's better. At level 11, Fleet Step. When you take a bonus action other than Step of the Wind, you can also Step of the Wind as part of the bonus action. I assume that would only be the free dash version of Step of the Wind now, though I'm sure you could spend a key, not discipline, focus point, to also disengage. So, okay, some potential utility there. And then at level 17, Quivering Palm. Alas, it is no longer a save or die ability. Now, we spend 4 focus points when we hit them with an unarmed strike to set up, the vibrations. And then when you end them, either with your action or by replacing one of your attacks from the attack action, they have to make a Constitution save or take 10d12 force damage, half on a save. Now, it used to be 10d10 necrotic on a save. So in that way, this is better, but then, yeah, they used to just die if they failed their save. Is this a nerf? It seems that way at first glance, but 6d12 damage if they make their save isn't that much less damage than the old 10d10, right? 39 versus 55. And we still get to make one of our attacks with the same action, whereas before, ending those vibrations to force the saving throw cost our entire action. So with a successful attack, the damage is pretty much the same if the enemy makes their save. And let's be honest, it's a Constitution save, and we're level 17. Most enemies, at least ones that we really want to use this on, are probably making that saving throw, right? Most importantly though, because we can do unarmed strikes with our bonus action, and at the beginning of our turn if we wanted, we could unarmed strike, spend 4 key points to initiate Quivering Palm, then with our action, make attacks and replace one of those attacks with the 10d12 or 6d12 damage if they make the save. And so long as we had the focus points for it, we could do this every turn, as opposed to setting this up one round, then activating it with our entire action the second, and not being able to make any unarmed strikes, right, with bonus actions of Flurry of Blows, because it used to be tied to taking the attack action. So overall, I think this is a lot stronger when you really break it down. Yeah, I'm a little sad about losing out on that save or die thing, because it was really the only feature in the game that worked quite like it did, right? Power Word Kill has limitations, 100 hit points or less, right? This was just anybody, as long as they fail a Constitution save. And that was fun and cool and powerful, but this is probably in-game both more useful and also potentially less frustrating for like a dungeon master, right? Who might set up this big boss battle and then get a bad roll and have their boss insta-gibbed. Or, more likely, spend legendary saves, right? And then it just does a little damage. But it costs your whole action, so it's ineffective, really, to use as a monk. So yeah, in the end, I think this is going to be a lot better. And I would say that I do like Way of the Open Hand even more than I used to, though, to be fair, I still think that the biggest improvement, at least for most of us who aren't going to be playing the game until level 17, comes from the fact that we now get to Flurry of Blows at the beginning of our turn if we want to, and it doesn't have to be tied to the attack action. Anyways, that's it for monks. And yeah, I do think that having looked at every class and subclass now in great detail, they probably got the most improvements out of anybody. And I am so happy about that. Thank you, Wizards. Can't wait to do some builds and see how they actually stack up numbers-wise when you get into the nitty-gritty. Okay, next up, what I think is probably my second favorite class in the game. I don't know if I've ever said that. I always talk about how monks are my favorite class, but paladins, I think, are my second. A big tanky protector tends to be the second character I play in any game, whether video game or like TTRPG. And Pally just scratches that itch so nicely. Now, they have long been known as one of, if not the best, base classes in the game. Did Wizards rein them in at all? Let's jump in. First up, great news, at level 1, Paladins now get spellcasting. So even though they're half-casters, they work more like Artificers now, in that they get spells right out the gate, and also, like Artificers, Paladins, and Rangers get half of their level rounded up instead of rounded down when you're trying to figure out your spell slots if you multi-class with another spellcaster, right? That's nice. I really appreciate that. Now, we get 2 Paladin spells to prepare at this level, and instead of preparing half our Paladin level plus Charisma modifier, we just gain more prepared spells with more Paladin levels. It just increases 1 per level. The Lay on Hands feature is mostly the same, with the really nice buff that it can be used as a bonus action now, not an action. Also, spending 5 points doesn't cure diseases because diseases, it seems, are just gone from the game. There will still be things, I'm sure, that function like a disease used to, but yeah, there don't seem to be any more like official written into the rules diseases, so not being able to cure them shouldn't be much of a problem. Then we get weapon masteries now. Paladins get 2 weapon masteries. For an overview of what those are, check the timestamp right down in when we were talking about the Barbarian. Fighters are the only ones who get 3, but everyone who gets them, it seems, can swap out which weapons they have mastery with, at least one, on a long rest. That's awesome. At level 2, the biggest and most dramatic change Paladins see, in my opinion, is the change to Divine Smite. We now get a feature at this level called Paladin's Smite, and it just says that we always have the Divine Smite spell prepared because, yes, in case you didn't know, Divine Smite has been changed to a specific spell now. We can cast it once per day without spending a spell slot for it. That's nice. Especially since we're a half caster, we don't have a ton of spell slots. But importantly, the spell now takes a bonus action to cast. Interestingly, we use the bonus action immediately after hitting an enemy with a melee weapon or, yeah, an unarmed strike now. So characters looking to smite with their fists or their knees or their elbows rejoice. But in this way, we still can wait, say, to see if we crit, and then use our bonus action to smite, etc. But just be careful not to use your bonus action before attacking, or you'll be left without a smite option. And, you know, that almost instantly kills like the monk paladin fantasy that I had in my head, because one of the monk's strongest features is their flurry of blows, which they need their bonus action for. And so, yeah, you can smite with your fists now, but who's smiting with their fists? I guess, you know, tavern brawler type characters. It could still happen. And to be fair, multiclassing monk with paladin was really difficult because of all of the minimum ability score requirements, but anyways. And yes, of course, this also means that you cannot smite more than once on your turn, nor can you smite with a reaction attack if you got one. You can still upcast it for more damage, and the damage doesn't appear to cap at 5d8 anymore, so if you multiclass and get higher level spell slots, feel free to go nuts. And yeah, it still does an extra d8 of damage to fiends and undead. But yeah, this is a nerf to paladins. I don't think there's any other way to really look at it. We get to use it 1 more time per day for free, and yeah, that free casting is only going to be done at the first level, right? Not at your highest level spell slot, since it doesn't specify that. That's kind of annoying. It'd be a little better if we got to do it at our highest level spell slot. I think I'm more troubled by the bonus action casting time than I am the limit to once per turn, honestly. I know I've built a ton of Nova characters in the past that were like, if you burn all of your spell slots in a single round of combat, then you can burst for insane damage by smiting a ton. But I think that in practice, at the table, in the combat encounter, that kind of thing happened pretty infrequently. But making it so that we have to spend both a spell slot and our bonus action and preventing us from using it on like an opportunity attack, etc., that stings quite a bit. And I think makes me feel like I'd be a lot less likely to smite. Maybe only if I got a crit or thought the smite would be the difference between life and death for the enemy. Arguably, you should be doing that most of the time when you smite anyways. You're a paladin, you don't have a lot of spell slots, right? But yeah, and this also like prohibits barbarians from smiting if they're raging. And that was kind of a big thing that a lot of builds would do, several of mine included, right? Now it's like you gotta choose between raging and smiting. Okay, I should add here that Wizards of the Coast have also changed all of those other smite spells, Thunderous Smite, Searing Smite, Banishing Smite, etc. In a way, what they're doing here kind of reminds me of what they're doing with the Rogue and Sneak attack, which we'll get to later. But yeah, you could Divine Smite, or you could, once you get access to these other smite spells anyways, give up some smite damage to instead do other things. Those smite spells no longer require concentration, and they work like Divine Smite in that you cast them as a bonus action after you hit, but then you're giving up some of the smite damage to blind them, or light them on fire, or make attacks against them have advantage, etc., etc. I appreciate the options and the versatility, and maybe I'll be convinced before long that this is actually overall a buff for the class. It's definitely more interesting and tactical, but yeah, it's also just less potential burst damage for our character anyways. And that's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, but it's okay. Paladins are still amazing. Let's move on. We do get access to fighting styles still at level 2, which comes in the form of feats now, right? And happily, we're no longer restricted to certain fighting styles. We can choose any of them. So stay tuned for dual wielding and maybe even ranged paladin builds in the future. We do also get access uniquely to the Blessed Warrior fighting style if we prefer, which still gives us 2 cleric cantrips. At level 3, Pallies still get their subclass or oath like all classes, more on those later. But we are also just told now that we get Channel Divinity. Like the cleric, we can use it twice per day, but regain 1 use of it on a short rest, so 1 more use of it per day, basically. 2 more once you hit level 11. But now it's used not for turn undead, that's the cleric thing, but for, well, your subclass stuff, of course, but also for Divine Sense. You're probably wondering what happened to that. This is slightly improved, but is still only situationally useful, I'd say. It lets you, with a bonus action now, detect the presence of undead celestials and fiends, or a place affected by the Hallow spell within 60 feet, not for a round, but for 10 minutes. Better, but still pretty situationally useful and requiring a use of your Channel Divinity. Now, at level 5, we still get extra attack and second level paladin spells, but instead of going, yay, I get the Find Steed spell, now we just get a new ability called Faithful Steed. This gives us the Find Steed spell for free and lets us cast it once per day without spending a spell slot. Before you get too excited though, Find Steed has been nerfed. Or at least I think nerfed when compared to the way that most people have historically used it at their table in 5e. Wizards of the Coast might simply argue that they've clarified the wording, but in a nutshell, the spell now summons a creature, an otherworldly steed with a specific stat block. That stat block is always the same no matter what you make them look like, and you get to decide what they look like, right? Their creature type is a fiend, celestial, or fey, your choice. They are large-sized and they are writable. However, we are very specifically told that while we write it in combat, it is a controlled mount. Period. The end. There's no you can communicate telepathically and fight as a seamless unit verbiage here anymore, meaning no more treating it as an independent mount that also kind of went where you wanted it to, like I think most tables played it. Now, if you're incapacitated, then it takes its turn after you and acts independently, focusing on defending you, and it has some decent stats and abilities, even being able to fly if you cast it as a 4th level spell or higher, essentially taking the place of Find Greater Steed, which no longer exists in the player's handbook. I'm not going to go into the stats of this steed too much otherwise because I've still got a lot to cover and we're not going to be using them that much in combat anymore going forward other than for some nice improved movement, right? And that's not nothing, but yeah, it's generally not going to be any kind of damage thing to take into consideration any longer. And yeah, in case you're wondering, the mounted combat rules are pretty much unchanged from the 2014 Player's Handbook, and that really bums me out, actually. I have a hard time believing that everyone at Wizards just looked at mounted combat and went, yeah, this works great, no changes needed, never any confusion or clarification that we gotta make, right? Apparently, I'm wrong. Or I guess the only change they saw that was needed was to just keep people from using Find Steed like both a controlled and independent mount at the same time. Feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to me, but let's move on. At level 6, Aura of Protection gets a small nerf here. It's still incredibly powerful, but now the bonus to saving throws that it grants can be turned off, not just if you're unconscious, but even if you just become incapacitated. So Getting stunned, for example, will turn your aura of protection off, and all of its accompanying buffs, which will increase with Paladin levels and Pali subclass features. I don't think this is a terrible change. The ability might have been just a tad too powerful before. Now it's still amazing, but there is a potential counter to it outside of just flat out making you go unconscious, right? At level 9, we now get a new ability. It's called Abjure Foes. It's similar to Turn Undead, but both stronger and weaker. It works on any enemy, not just undead, but only up to our Charisma modifier in number of enemies. We use a Channel Divinity charge and a magic action to force them to make a Wisdom save, or they are frightened for a minute or until they take damage. They're not incapacitated, they can still do stuff, but have to choose between an action, a bonus action, or movement. Only one. That's some pretty strong control, especially considering that we don't have to concentrate for it or anything, and they don't get to save against it at the end of their turn either, so very nice. At level 10, Aura of Courage is essentially the same, but gets some language cleanup. Now they just talk about it like a buff to your Aura of Protection, though it's functionally the same. They also clarified that if a frightened ally enters your aura, then their frightened condition has no effect on them. And yeah, this is kind of a pattern that we see. All of these things that used to say, you get a new aura now, you get a new aura now, are just like, your aura of protection is improved in this way. At level 11, Improved Divine Smite gets a name change to Radiant Strikes and is further improved, just like Divine Smite, by adding a d8 to all attacks with a melee weapon and unarmed strikes now. At level 14, Cleansing Touch gets changed to Restoring Touch and nerfed a bit, I think. Now it just says that when you use Lay on Hands, which again can be done with a bonus action, so that's nice, you can also spend 5 points to not just end the effect of a spell on someone, but to remove specifically Blinded, Charmed, Deafened, Frightened, which is weird since supposedly they aren't affected by Frightened when we're close enough to touch them now, but Paralyzed or Stunned. That's a lot of things we get to remove, which is great. In some situations, I guess you'll be glad to have this, but it still seems a bit weaker to me than just ending any spell. I guess that depends. Maybe they're under one of these effects from something other than a spell, right? In which case, this is better. Either way, it's pretty potent. At level 19, we get epic boons, just like everybody. Check the timestamp if you want a breakdown on those. But then no change to the fact that our aura expands to 30 feet. Again, it's just called our aura of protection. All told, I think the Paladin core class is still in a really, really great place. There were some nerfs, sure, but some buffs too, and in the end, I think it's still one of the strongest core classes in the game. So let's see how the subclasses fared. First up, Oath of Devotion. This has gone from one of the most meh subclasses to me to maybe my favorite. At level 3, first up, their spell list has changed a bit. They get Shield of Faith instead of Sanctuary, and then at 5 they get Aid instead of Lesser Restoration, but no other changes. Still, I think better overall. As for their Channel Divinity abilities, so one interesting change is that all Paladin subclasses now only get one additional use for their Channel Divinity from their subclass. On the one hand, that's a bit of a bummer, but I think if we're being honest, almost all of them seem to have one Channel Divinity that was a lot more useful than the other, the really good ones at least. So I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. Also, a lot of the other Channel Divinity options that are gone now have kind of been replaced by Abjure Foe. Now, granted, that doesn't come until much later, but it works on any enemy. All Paladins can do it, and it's a pretty serious debuff. So yeah, I don't miss that other Channel Divinity option being gone all that much. As for Devotion Paladins, I am so freaking thrilled with the Sacred Weapon change. It now doesn't require an action or even a bonus action to activate. How the freaking Luya. We're simply told that when we take the attack action, we can expend a Channel Divinity charge to give our weapon that sweet bonus to hit equal to our Charisma modifier for 10 minutes. Man, that is just so much better. I just love buffs that don't require any setup. I wish there were more of them in game. This continues to also emit light, and lets us choose the normal weapons damage or radiant damage when we hit. Again, they've gotten rid of the whole magical versus non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, slashing thing, which I'm so happy about. Also, this no longer ends early if you go unconscious, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is just so much easier to use, and you can bet that I'm going to be building around it a lot. At level 7, Aura of Devotion got a bit of a buff in that it now works like our Aura of Courage, but for Charmed, So not only can enemies not be charmed within 10 feet of us, but if they already are, the charmed condition has no effect on them. So Devotion Pallies can basically make your whole party immune to charmed and feared, which is awesome. At level 15, Purity of Spirit gets replaced by Smite of Protection, which feels like a weirdly named thing, but instead of now just always being under the effect of protection from good and evil, we're told that when we use Divine Smite, we and our allies inside of our aura of protection now benefit from half cover, which again is a +2 to armor class and dexterity saves until the beginning of our next turn. Okay, a little bit of an optional protection ability there, kind of cool. And then at level 20, Paladins, I think they're the only class that get their capstone, their level 20 feature from their subclass, right? Holy Nimbus here gets some mostly minor improvements. We can activate it with a bonus action now instead of an action. That's great. We get advantage on any save an undead or fiend forces us to make, not just spells cast by them. The damage enemies take is our charisma modifier plus our proficiency bonus. So at this level, that's probably one more, maybe just the same depending on our build. And we can use it again if we expend a 5th level spell slot. Yeah, in the end, I freaking love Devotion Paladins now. I want to play one immediately, or at least build one. Okay, let's move on to Oath of Glory, another Pally subclass that I didn't really find myself using all that often in the past. Did they get just as good a treatment? Their spell list is totally unchanged, except for at 17th level, where both spells are changed. They now get Legend Lore, nice for utility, and then a brand new spell called Yolanda's Regal Presence. This is sort of like Spirit Guardians. You cast it as an action, it requires concentration, and then gives you a 10-foot aura, basically, that does a bunch of stuff if enemies fail their wisdom save. 46 psychic damage, they get knocked prone, no size restriction there, and can be pushed 10 feet away, no size restriction there. Pretty awesome. Very interestingly, we're told that these things can all happen not just when a creature enters the area or ends their turn in the area, but yes, when we move the area of the spell onto them. And here is a huge change that you might not have known about. As far as I can tell, no spell in the game now does damage both when a creature enters the area and when they start their turn there. Only when they enter and end their turn there, making a build that focuses on pushing an enemy into a spell's area of effect a lot less likely to double up on damage every round. I'm talking Moonbeam, Cloud of Daggers, Spirit Guardians, the new Conjure Animals spell, all of them. But they all also let the damage happen when you move the spell's area of effect onto them, always with the only once per turn exception. I feel like I might be to blame for this. I have done so many freaking builds that took advantage of that double up if you push them feature, right? Where they take damage when you push them in and then at the start of their turn. If it was my fault, I apologize for breaking it. But at the same time, I think overall, I like this change. It was getting to the point where the best thing to do was almost always find a way to push an enemy into a spell like this and then just scale the spell as much as you possibly could. And that was starting to get a little redundant, if I'm being honest. Plus, it just makes sense that a creature would take damage as soon as you put a damaging spell's area of effect onto them, whether it's your turn or theirs, right? So yeah, arguably a nerf to these kinds of spells, but a buff as well, and overall, probably a change for the better. And now, yeah, you can cast Spirit Guardians on yourself, for example, if you have it, and run around the battlefield and do damage to every enemy that you get within 15 feet of. That makes sense and is really cool. So yeah, I think I like this. As for the Channel Divinity option that Glory Paladins get to keep, sadly, perhaps, is Peerless Athlete. Farewell, Inspiring Smite. They changed it to last for an hour instead of 10 minutes, but it still gives the same arguably questionable most of the time benefits, especially now that grappling doesn't have you make athletics checks. Though they removed the whole you can drag and push more to verbiage. Inspiring Smite wasn't amazing, but I think I'd prefer to have that instead. Is it too late to change Wizards? Probably. At level 7, Aura of Alacrity got improved a bit, simplified. tried, anyways, to just say anyone benefiting from your Aura of Protection also has a 10-foot speed increase, basically. Sometimes that'll be exactly what you need. At level 20, Glorious Defense is, so far as I can tell, unchanged. It's still pretty good, but Living Legend was changed to last 10 minutes instead of 1 and is otherwise unchanged. It's still really nice. And that's it for the Glory Paladin. Still a strong character and still probably one of my least favorite Paladin subclasses. I don't know, their late game features are a lot better than their early game ones. That's the issue, I guess. And I'm always the guy multiclassing to pick up low-level class and subclass power, right? Maybe next time I start a campaign at higher level, I should go Glory, and I would probably appreciate them a lot more. Bringing us then up next to our Oath of Ancients Paladin, the Nature Lover, the Green Knight. At level 3, there is absolutely zero change to the Ancients Paladin spell list, which was pretty decent. It continues to be so. But Turn the Faithless got axed as a channel divinity option. The good news is that Nature's Wrath got buffed. It now works on each creature of our choice instead of 1. It's within 15 feet, not 10, and they have to succeed on a strength save, not choose between strength and dexterity. And then, yeah, they're restrained if they fail their save, saving again at the end of each turn, but it only lasts a minute instead of theoretically forever, which I guess you could say is a nerf, but in practice, not really, right? At level 7, Aura of Warding unfortunately got a bit of a nerf. I mean, in most scenarios, I think. Now, instead of just giving an aura of resistance to damage from all spells, it gives resistance to necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage. So, sure, there will be times when this is better. A creature is doing psychic damage to you, but not via a spell, right? But when someone casts a fireball on you, you'll be sad you don't have the old aura, right? Maybe it's a side grade, I suppose. It's still good. And depending on what you're fighting, fantastic. Or worthless. At level 15, Undying Sentinel got a nice buff in that it not only prevents you from going unconscious when you drop to 0 hit points, but now it both puts you at 1 hit point instead and heals you for 3 times your paladin level. So 45 hit points right now, which is pretty decent. And yeah, this is something that we're seeing a lot of, right? Those old you, instead of dropping to 0 hit points, you drop to 1, getting kind of a buff. Finally, at level 20, Elder Champion now works with a bonus action instead of an action. That's happening a lot on all classes and subclasses, right? But then it can be reused more than once per day if you spend a 5th level spell slot for it. The benefits of the ability are otherwise unchanged though, and it is still potentially potent. I still think Ancients Paladins are one of the better subclasses, especially for defense and tanking and protecting, right? But maybe a little less so with their Aura of Warding change. They got some other buffs though, so maybe it's a wash. Then finally, every burst damage dealer's darling, the Oath of Vengeance Paladin. Where are we at here? First of all, at level 3, their spell list, which is one of, if not the best pally spell lists of any subclass, is completely unchanged, but par for the course. Abjure Enemy got nixed. Oh, stop pretending like you ever used Channel Divinity for anything other than Vow of Enmity anyways. And you'll be thrilled to know, like I was, that it is even better now. Way better. Like with Devotion Paladins, you can now just gain advantage on your enemy when you take the attack, right? You use that Vow of Enmity without taking an action or bonus action or anything. So awesome. But even better, when you fell your foe before the 1 minute timer is up, you can transfer Vow of Enmity to another enemy. No action required. Holy cow, that is so freaking good. I mean, is it better or worse than the Devotion Paladin's Charisma modifier to hit? Depends on the enemy AC, depends on your Charisma modifier, right? And your hit chance. Though Sacred Weapon lasts 10 minutes, not 1, and can potentially have your weapon do radiant damage. But yeah, advantage is advantage, and being able to use it on more than just a single enemy is so fantastic. At level 7, Relentless Avenger got a nice buff, which is great because it was pretty lame before. Now, when we hit an enemy with an opportunity attack, we not only can move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks, but also can reduce the enemy's movement to 0, like the Sentinel feat, and that's pretty dang nice. Then Soul of Vengeance at 15 is essentially unchanged except for some wording clarifying that your reaction attack is made after they have made theirs, but Avenging Angel at level 20 has changed to use a bonus action instead of an action. Again, nice, but to only last for 10 minutes instead of an hour. Not nice. Otherwise, the ability is unchanged. So that's it for the Paladin. They are still fantastic and amazing, but I might argue that Devotion Paladins could get an edge over Vengeance for damage, to say nothing of their superior protection-based abilities. I don't know, but I can't wait to see for myself in game. Don't tell anyone, but dipping Warlock for Paladins is maybe better than ever. It's going to be really hard not to do, especially as a Devotion Pally. But we'll get more into that later when we talk about Warlocks. And that brings us then to Rangers. A lot of people used to think that Rangers were the weakest class in the 2014 Player's Handbook. I'd still argue that they were monks, but they were definitely kind of down there, bottom of the barrel, most people's opinions. With the changes that came to Rangers from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, I think that changed mechanically, though it didn't seem to change a lot of people's opinions. They still kind of thought Rangers were lame. I think I'd disagree with that statement, but maybe like in the bottom half, or maybe even bottom third of like mechanical power when it came to classes. That would probably depend on if you were playing a Gloomstalker or not, I suppose. Anyways, let's see what they've changed about them for the 2024 Player's Handbook. In a nutshell, they've changed a lot. First up, at level 1, like Paladins, yes, we get spells here at level 1, which is fantastic. We also get to prepare more spells now than Rangers used to have spells known, right? It's now the exact same amount as the Paladin, and I appreciate the consistency. And just like the Pally, we can change one prepared spell after a long rest, which is great for versatility. Rangers also get Weapon Mastery here. They get 2 weapons to have mastery with now, like all martials, except fighters and monks who get none. Lame, I didn't even mention that when I was talking about monks. Can you at least give us 1 weapon mastery? Or maybe like give unarmed strikes a weapon mastery feature, like just for monks or something. I feel like I have to dip fighter 1 on every monk from now on. Or maybe ranger, actually, or rogue. Anyways, we get favored enemy at this level 2, and thank goodness that both the old favored foe from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is gone. I really didn't like that ability. And that favored enemy is better than the 2014 Player's Handbook, in that now it just gives us Hunter's Mark, that quintessential ranger spell, and lets us cast it twice per day for free and more often as we gain ranger levels. But wait, I thought Hunter's Mark was a bad spell. First of all, I don't think that was necessarily true even in the 2014 rules, but I think it's even less true now, mainly because there actually just aren't as many ways to weaponize your bonus action. I mean, thanks to the crossbow expert nerf, and like even 2-weapon fighting can be done with just your action, right? Thanks to the Nick weapon mastery property. It feels to me like Wizards has really tried to keep bonus actions for doing things other than making attacks with the 2024 version. Not always, of course there's exceptions, but I'm a little torn on how I feel about this. On the one hand, it's nice to not have to feel obligated to always try and find ways to get more attacks or damage out of your bonus action, and instead keep that free for doing other fun, flavorful, useful things in combat that pretty much every class or subclass has some ability to do. On the other hand, there are still ways to get bonus action attacks. And I can't help but think that at least when I'm building for the spreadsheet, right, I'm gonna be almost a little more pigeonholed than I was before into doing things to get damage from my bonus action. I guess we'll see. Regardless, Hunter's Mark now does extra force damage, not weapon damage, and you can upcast it to make it last longer. I'm really bummed that you can't upcast it to do more damage. Plenty of spells in game do damage on every hit, and upcast to do even more. It seems really odd that they wouldn't allow that for Hunter's Mark. And that's just the beginning of the things that I'm a little bit frustrated about when it comes to Hunter's Mark. We'll get into more as we go. At level 2, they pulled Deft Explorer from Tasha's to replace the pretty bad and only situationally useful Natural Explorer, and even made it slightly better. We get expertise in 1 skill now, as well as a couple new languages. We also get a fighting style here, just like fighters and pallies, and yeah, it can be any fighting style now, but including, unique for Rangers, Druidic Warrior, which lets us learn 2 Druidic cantrips. At level 3, we get our subclass, just like every class now, more on those later. And then at level 5, no changes to extra attack or anything, but at level 6, we get Roving, which again came from the Tasha's improvements, but it's a little better in that it now increases our speed by 10 feet instead of 5, as well as giving us a climb and swim speed, though it does have a restriction now that we can't be wearing heavy armor. Not a huge deal, not a lot of Rangers were wearing heavy armor, but it's there. At level 8, Land Stride is just gone. which is fine because it was kind of bad. But instead, at level 9, we get something in addition to 3rd level spells, and it's another round of expertise, though now we get to choose 2 more skills to gain expertise in. At level 10, Hide in Plain Sight is gone, which some people might be a little sad about, but it really wasn't all that useful in most situations. Instead, we get Tireless, again from Tasha's, but the only change to it is that we can use it Wisdom modifier times per day instead of Proficiency bonus times per day. And we still get to drop an exhaustion level with a short rest like we have since Tasha's. At 13, we get something new again, a Relentless Hunter, which just tells us that damage can't break concentration on Hunter's Mark anymore. That's cool, and I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I mean, why not just make it not require concentration anymore instead? It's just a d6 of damage. We are level 13, you know? Oh well, it's a buff. At level 14, Nature's Veil replaces Vanish, and it's a bit better and a bit worse. Wisdom modifier times per day, it lets us just have the invisible condition as a bonus action until the end of our next turn. So we don't need to have the right conditions to hide in or make a stealth check or anything, which is great, but it is limited in use. Overall, I think I like it better, even if it removes the "you can't be tracked by non-magical means" wording. Out of curiosity, has anyone ever found that useful in a campaign, that you can't be tracked by non-magical means? Let me know in the comments. At level 17, Precise Hunter, yet another new feature. This just straight up gives us advantage against our Hunter's Marked target. Not bad. Wizards really wants us to use Hunter's Mark here, which, again, I have mixed feelings about. Like, yeah, it's a quintessential spell. Yeah, it's good, not great, and sometimes you might want to be using something else, in which case this feature does nothing, right? And I feel like we're sort of even more pigeonholed into Hunter's Mark when we get to subclasses, at least some of them. Anyways, at level 18, Feral Senses is similar but better and simplified, telling us that we just have Blind Sight now, out to a range of 30 feet. That's awesome. At level 19, we get an Epic Boon, just like everyone else. These are amazing. Check the timestamp if you want a little breakdown on what those are. And then at level 20, Foe Slayer, the old Foe Slayer was a little underwhelming, letting us add our Wisdom modifier once per turn to either the attack or damage roll of a favored enemy or favored foe. Now it increases the damage die of Hunter's Mark to a d10. So, I mean, if we're attacking twice in a round, that's 5 more damage on average if we hit both times, compared to 4 or 5 damage once per turn, like it used to do. And now that's assuming that we're using Hunter's Mark, and if we're not, it does nothing. So yeah, we're probably using Hunter's Mark, but this just is making me a little nervous. I feel like as a level 20 capstone feature, it's pretty lackluster still. And in fact, I think I'd rather have the option to potentially add it to my hit chance, since the increase to damage is negligible, especially at level 20. Regardless, overall, I think you'd have to argue that when compared to the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything Ranger or the 2014 Ranger, we mostly got buffed here. We might not love the buffs, but it's not like we got worse. So let's keep that in mind as we move into subclasses. So the first one that we're going to talk about, that most quintessential of Ranger subclasses, the one that was most thoroughly hated in the 2014 version, but that got the most love in the update from Tasha's, the Beastmaster. How are they doing now? Well, basically, the changes from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything are being used as the model for this version of the Beastmaster. You get a Primal Companion at level 3. It can be land, air, or sea, and you have to either give up one of your attacks to have it attack, or use your bonus action. Did I say earlier we weren't often seeing weaponized bonus actions? Yeah, sorry about that. And that really actually kind of frustrates me here. I complained about this in the playtest, as I'm sure many of you did as well, but it looks like those complaints might have fallen on deaf ears. If we're so heavily encouraged to always use Hunter's Mark, but so much of this subclass's power comes from a bonus action pet attack, can we not see the conflict here? Hunter's Mark requires a bonus action to use and to transfer, to the point at which you're probably having to spend at least half of your bonus actions of every combat encounter to manage it, right? It's going to make playing a Beastmaster super frustrating, I think, and I'm kind of shocked they didn't either change it so that the pet didn't require a resource to command, or, and which might have been too powerful, or make it so Hunter's Mark isn't so bonus action dependent, which would have been my preference. Grrr. As for the beasts themselves, I wouldn't say there are any major differences in their stats and abilities, though They're even more dependent on your wisdom modifier now than they were before, to hit, to damage, and even their armor class now, meaning, yeah, this ranger is probably going to be madder than most, right? Multiple ability score dependent. At level 7, exceptional training is much better now in that it says if we use our bonus action to command our companion to take any action, they can also dash, disengage, or dodge, or help with their bonus action. Not bad. That's either helping them stay safe or get into combat range or give us advantage on an attack maybe, right? Also, the damage can be force damage if we want, instead of being magical physical damage, which again is kind of going away. At level 11, Bestial Fury is improved as well, telling us that when our beast strikes, they can attack twice, and the first time they hit our hunter's marked target, they do extra force damage equal to the damage of the spell. So it's like they get to use Hunter's Mark too, at least once per turn. But obviously you see the conflict here, right? I mean, I guess on turns that we need to, we're probably going to be transferring Hunter's Mark with our bonus action and then giving up one of our own attacks to let the beast attack a couple of times, depending on how good our magic weapon is, what our wisdom modifier might be. And in that scenario, again, yeah, kind of frustrating to me that we sort of have to choose between Hunter's Mark or pet attack, or I guess now our own attack, right? I would like to make both of my attacks and have my pet attack and transfer Hunter's Mark if need be, please. Thank you very much. But alas. At level 15, share spells is essentially the same. So again, everything we're seeing here is either the same or better than what we saw in Tasha's, I think. I just really wish they wouldn't have set us up for such a bonus action traffic jam. So it's not like we got nerfed. These are improvements. They're just frustrating improvements. I guess I'm just saying I wish they would have gone a little bit further, right? But it's not like we're worse now or anything like that. So let's keep some perspective here. Okay, next up, my very favorite ranger subclass of all time, at least conceptually, the Fey Wanderer. Whimsy. At level 3, first up, one change to the spells that Fey Wanderers get. At 9th level, they learn Summon Fey instead of Dispel Magic. Makes sense. There's no change to Dreadful Strikes or otherworldly glamour here, though. At level 7, the only change to Beguiling Twist is that it just clarifies that we have advantage on saves to both avoid or end the charmed or frightened condition. At level 11, the only change to Fey Reinforcements is that it doesn't say we know the spell because we automatically learned it at level 9, right? It's now part of our Fey Wanderer spell list. Still my favorite Fey Wanderer ability. I love the option to potentially have 2 little Fey spirits out fighting for us. So cool. And there's no change to the Misty Wanderer feature. So kind of like we're seeing with most of the subclasses that came out after the original player's handbook but are added to this player's handbook, we're not getting much change. But I'm still happy to see them officially in the player's handbook now. All right, that brings us to the unarguably, I'm sorry, you cannot argue with this, most powerful ranger subclass, the Gloomstalker. Is it still the undisputed champion of rangers? At level 3, there are no changes to the spells that Gloomstalkers get to learn, but Dread Ambusher has been nerfed. Instead of getting an extra attack on the first round of combat, we now get an extra 2d6 of psychic damage to a weapon attack, no more than once per turn, and wisdom modifier times per day only. I mean, that's still decent. It's like a mini smite that you can use a few times per day, right? But it's just not overpowered like it used to be. Sorry, I think it was. And hey, Umbral Sight got a slight buff. If you already have Dark Vision, its range increases by 60 feet, and you still get to be invisible to creatures that rely on Dark Vision to see you, so still really, really good, right? And overall, a super solid set of features here, even if it's a bit of a nerf taken all together. There's no change to Iron Mind at level 7, but at level 11, Stalker's Fury tells us that our Dreadful Strike damage increases to 2d8, instead of 2d6, and when you use it, you can either make another attack with the same weapon against a different creature within 5 feet of the original target and within range, kind of like the Hunter's Hordebreaker, or force the target and every creature within 10 feet of them, we don't get to choose, so potentially allies too here, to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened for a round. Sometimes frightening a bunch of enemies will be better than turning a miss into another attack, but sometimes not. And yeah, it kind of gives us back a little bit of that you can attack more stuff that they kind of took away from us at level 3, though it does have to be against a different enemy. And sometimes you're not going to have a different enemy within 5 feet of the original one that you attacked, right? But at level 15, Shadowy Dodge got a buff. Now you can use it even if the enemy has advantage against you, though that would just negate it, right? And the attack would be made as normal. But then afterwards, you can teleport up to 30 feet. That's pretty awesome. No limit on how often you can use this either. So if you're not reliably getting opportunity attacks, you could be bamfing all over the battlefield every round and making yourself a lot harder to hit. So super cool. In the end, yeah, I think Gloomstalker got some needed balancing tweaks, but they're still super strong, and it's not like they only got nerfed. They got some buffs too. So yeah, still one of, if not the most powerful Ranger subclass. And then finally, we've got the quintessential Ranger subclass, the Hunter. At level 3, Hunters and Beastmasters don't get extra spells for some reason. Sucks to be you guys. I guess these were kind of an attempt to be the more simplified subclasses, right? But then at level 3, Hunters do get a new feature, Hunter's Lore, which lets you just know, no action required, the immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities of your Hunter's marked prey. Pretty dang cool, honestly. Depending on what you're fighting, it might be incredible. And also super thematic. I also love the reworked Hunter's Prey feature here. Giant Killer is gone, which is fine because no one took it anyways, right? But Colossus Slayer and Hordebreaker, while they're unchanged, you can now swap out which option you choose after a short rest. That is so awesome. Man, I have been wanting that for so long. I know I've even asked about it in multiple videos. Was someone from Wizards of the Coast watching? Probably not. At level 7, similarly, Defensive Tactics has lost the Steel Will option, which is fine. And yeah, Escape the Horde and Multi-Attack Defense are still there, but can be swapped between with a short rest. Though Multi-Attack Defense has changed. Now it says, if a creature hits you with an attack roll, they have disadvantage on all other attacks against you this turn instead of a +4 to your armor class. That might be better, might be worse, depending on their hit chance and your armor class. Probably worse on average. It's going to prevent critical hits most of the time. So yeah, maybe it's better. Regardless, it's definitely better because you can swap between the two options now, right? At level 11, multi-attack is gone, which makes me a little sad, though the ability could have been pretty niche, right? Instead, we get Superior Hunter's Prey, which says that once per turn, when we deal damage to an enemy marked by Hunter's Mark, we can also deal Hunter's Mark damage to a different creature within 30 feet of them. So 3.5 damage on average. That's not amazing. And again, we're really getting pushed towards using Hunter's Mark, and I continue to wish that it was a little better in that case. Let us upcast it for more damage. Let us either not concentrate on it, or better yet, not need to use a bonus action to transfer it. Anyways, at level 15, Superior Hunter's Defense has also changed quite a bit, simplified. Instead of getting 3 choices, we're told that when we take damage, we can use our reaction to get resistance to that damage and any other damage of the same type until the end of the current turn. Sort of like Uncanny Dodge, which was a previous option, but better. I don't know. I get that they're trying to make Hunters the less complex Ranger choice here, but I really love the changes that are coming at levels 3 and 7, giving us choices that we could swap out with a short rest. Kind of wish they would have stuck with that theme. But hey, this is a solid feature, and overall, I'd say Hunters are improved, especially at early levels. And yeah, that's it for Rangers. Are they better? Are they worse? I mean, I think it's difficult to argue objectively that they are worse. I think it's difficult to argue objectively that they're not better. They are. I just am a little frustrated by the pigeonholing of Hunter's Mark, coupled with kind of the lack of improvements to Hunter's Mark. But yeah, aside from, you know, the nerf to Gloomstalkers that prevents them from getting potentially a couple extra attacks on round 1, right, if you're action surging like so many Gloomstalkers would do, they are generally improved. I hope you like the Hunter's Mark spell. Okay, let's take a lunch break. Had a quick wardrobe change, and yeah, this is day 3 of recording this video for me. It might be day 3 or more of watching it for you, I suppose. But we are coming down the home stretch here. We got 4 classes to go. So next up is the Rogue, and I kind of went over a lot of this stuff when I did that Assassin Rogue build that Wizards of the Coast asked me to put together back in June. Yeah, watch it there. Check it out if you haven't seen it. But I want to be thorough here for this video and also discuss the other subclasses that I haven't yet. So let's review quickly. Things that are changing for rogues. At level 1, expertise. It doesn't mention doubling our proficiency bonus in Thieves' Tools anymore, just skills. But also, we're given in the tools section of the book like a flat DC for disarming traps and picking locks now. I'm sure that a DM could decide to up that if it was a particularly difficult lock or trap. But generally speaking, it feels to me like if you've got a high dexterity and proficiency in Thieves' Tools, picking locks and disarming traps might be easier now than it used to be. I don't know. We'll see. Sneak attack itself hasn't changed at level 1, but we will get more from sneak attack later, so stay tuned. Happily, though, we do get something awesome and new at level 1, weapon masteries. We get to pick 2 weapons to use these masteries for and can change them after a long rest. Again, I went over the weapon masteries in the Barbarian section, so check the timestamp down below if you need a refresher there. Having weapon masteries on a rogue is really great, especially for the Nick property, I think, for melee rogues anyways, as that is going to free up our bonus action, and we have so many great uses for our bonus action as a rogue, right? At level 2, no changes to cunning action. At level 3, we still get our subclass, more on those in a minute. Steady aim is now officially part of the rogue arsenal in the player's handbook, right? And I love that. It says that we can use our bonus action to give ourselves advantage on our next attack this turn, so long as we haven't moved yet on this turn, and then afterwards our move speed is 0 for the rest of the turn. That no movement thing is a bit of a bummer, especially for those of us who will be in melee. Still, I think this feature is a whole lot better with weapon masteries. First of all, because thanks to the Nick mastery, we no longer need our bonus action to make a second attack on our turn, freeing it up for this or cunning action, right? Which is just so great for rogues. Second of all, because thanks to the Vex mastery, even though steady aim only gives us, sadly, advantage on one attack, our next attack this turn, well, if we make that attack with a Vex weapon, and so long as we land that attack, then our next attack will have advantage as well, meaning that we could steady aim, attack with a Vex weapon, right? Assuming we hit, which we probably will because we have advantage, we'll have advantage on our next attack too, and the synergy there is just perfect. At level 5, there's no change to Uncanny Dodge, but the other feature rogues now get at level 5, Cunning Strike, is where things get really interesting. Cunning Strike gives us some new ways to use our sneak attack, right? Or rather, it treats sneak attack dice like a resource that we can expend every turn to either just do maximum damage, that would be 3d6 right now, right, every time we use it, or if we choose, we can now sacrifice one of those d6s, and only one per instance of sneak attack, for now anyways, to attempt one of the following 3 things. Poison, which says as long as we've got a poisoner's kit on us, we can force the enemy to make a constitution save or have the poisoned condition for 1 minute. A pretty solid debuff. They do get to attempt to save out of the condition at the end of each of their turns, of course. Trip says that if they are large or smaller, they have to succeed on a dexterity save or be knocked prone. Always nice. And finally, Withdraw lets us spend a d6 to move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Might not be super needed for those of us with cunning action, but hey, maybe we want to use our bonus action to hide. This would let us also scoot away first for free, so not terrible. At level 6, no change to Expertise Part 2. At level 7, no change to Evasion, but then gloriously reliable talent gets bumped from level 11 all the way up to level 7. Evasion was already good. Adding reliable talent at this level makes it super juicy. As reliable talent says, whenever we make an ability check that uses one of our skill or tool proficiencies, we can treat anything rolled lower than a 9 as a 10. This is such a fantastic skill monkey ability and makes me want to go to 7 on like every rogue. At level 10, we still get an extra feat at 10, which is great. Level 11, improved Cunning Strike now just tells us that we can use 2 Cunning Strike effects when we use Sneak Attack now. We still have to pay the die cost for each, but you could be like poisoning and tripping or withdrawing on the same turn. But then at level 14, we get Devious Strikes, and this just gives us even more and more powerful things to spend our Sneak Attack dice on. if we so choose. And yes, they are considered Cunning Strike options, thus we could do 2 of them on the same turn if we wanted to. First up, my favorite, I think, Daze. This costs 2d6, but says that if the enemy fails their Constitution save against it, they, on their next turn, can move or take an attack action or a bonus action, but only one of those things. That is really, really potent. Similar in many ways to like the slow spell. Sure, the con save might prove to be a bit of a bummer, but it might not be so bad. We'll see when the new monster manual comes out. Next, Knockout, which is the most expensive Cunning Strike option we get. We've got to give up most of our sneak attack dice here, 6d6, but it is the most devastating in that if an enemy fails their Constitution save against this, they're just straight up unconscious for a minute, or until they take any damage. They do get to try and save against it at the end of every turn, but unconscious, that's pretty much the worst condition you can inflict other than the dead condition, right? If nothing else, this would set them up to be automatically critically hit by us on another turn or by an ally. That might be worth giving up 6d6 this turn to do big burst damage next. Not to mention taking them out of the fight for 1 or more rounds, right? The last of our new options, Obscure, costs 3d6 and says that if the enemy fails their dexterity save against it, they are blinded until the end of their next turn, which means their attacks are made at disadvantage, and attacks against them have advantage. I love the flavor of these abilities, and they are pretty potent debuffs, every one of them. At level 15, Slippery Mind has changed to give us proficiency in both Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. Can't complain about that. At level 18, no change to Elusive. At level 19, we get an epic boon just like everyone else. They are amazing. Check out the timestamp again in the Barbarian section if you want an overview of what those are. And then at level 20, Stroke of Luck has changed in that it works when you fail any d20 test now, including saves. It's otherwise the same, but better than ever. So yeah, that's the base class for the rogue. And let me maybe just address something that I have been seeing a lot of, even in the comments on my own assassin build video. People are complaining that rogues are kind of the weakest class now. I see where those people are coming from. I do. And part of me tends to agree a little bit, if I'm being honest. At least when it comes to damage, I think compared to other martial classes, they probably are going to be weaker than any. I'd love to prove myself wrong, and I'm going to do my best to try and prove myself wrong in future rogue build videos, right? Sneak attack damage just doesn't scale enough still to keep up with things like extra attack, right? Kind of like I said at the end of my assassin build video, right? The added control and debuff options that rogues get here might make them more powerful than we're giving them credit for. I know a lot of these Cunning Strike debuffs are giving Constitution saves, so that might lead us into a similar place that monks have been, right? Where, oh, Stunning Strike is so good. Well, yeah, but everybody makes their save against it, so it's really not that good. But, I mean, dazing enemies, blinding enemies, flat out knocking them unconscious. Yeah, like we're not doing as much damage, but we could potentially do that every single round. There might be fights where we've got 2, 3, 4 bodies just lying on the ground, just flat knocked out, while our party deals with the rest of the enemies, right? So I guess I want to just encourage caution when it comes to passing judgment on this rogue until we see it in action. I mean, it's definitely stronger than the 2014 version. The complaint, and I get it, is that other martial classes got more buffs than rogues did, and they were already kind of behind in the damage area. And you know, the counter argument to that used to be, well, yeah, they might not do as much damage, but they bring a lot more utility, and that's worth something. That's important. It might not necessarily show up in combat or on the spreadsheets, but it's valuable. And that continues to be true. But now they've got more versatility and a lot more power in the debuff and control realms. And while, yeah, their damage might lag behind other martial characters, I don't want to discount that too much. Okay, let's jump into subclasses. So first up, we've got the Arcane Trickster. What used to be, I think, the most powerful rogue subclass, is probably still the most powerful rogue subclass because spells. But at level 3, the spellcasting that we got some nice improvements. You still learn 3 cantrips right away, one of which has to be Mage Hand, but we're now told that we can swap out any of them that isn't Mage Hand anytime we gain a rogue level. As for leveled spells, we still get them at the slow 1/3 caster rate, but now, blessedly, we are not restricted to certain schools of magic, just like the Eldritch Knight, and that is so awesome. Mage Hand Legerdemain is essentially unchanged, except that we can now cast it as a bonus action. I guess that's a pretty big change. Otherwise, the language is just simplified, telling us that our Mage Hand is invisible and that we can control it with a bonus action to make sleight of hand checks. At level 9, Magical Ambush is essentially the same. It just says that if we have the invisible condition instead of if we're hidden, then creatures have disadvantage on their saves against the spell this turn. Yes, invisible is now a condition. At level 13, Versatile Trickster is quite different, probably because Steady Aim is officially in the player's handbook, though the old Versatile Trickster was much better than Steady Aim due to it not restricting movement and giving advantage on all attacks this turn. Now, the ability says that when you use the trip option from Cunning Strike to try and knock an enemy prone, thanks to our Mage Hand, we can try to knock a second one prone as well if they're within 5 feet. I mean, I like that I don't have to use up my bonus action now, but yeah, enemies get to save against trip, and you're not always going to be fighting 2 enemies standing next to each other, so it will be better in some situations, but worthless in others, I guess. I don't necessarily love the change, if I'm being honest. At level 17, Spell Thief, the only change here is that the saving throw your enemy makes to avoid the effects of you negating their spell and stealing knowledge of it is specifically an intelligence saving throw, not their spellcasting ability. That'll be nice against some enemies, right? Charisma-based, wisdom-based casters, no change against others. It's still pretty good ability, but admittedly, our own DC for this is probably not going to be amazing, I'd guess, since intelligence will probably be, at best, our second, if not third or even fourth highest ability score, right? Unless we're trying to make an intelligence first rogue, maybe with a battlesmith or an armor artificer dip. I mean, there's potential there, but then I guess you wouldn't be getting this ability until level 20. Anyways, that's it for the Arcane Trickster. Looks like the most powerful rogue subclass got some small to large buffs, and then arguably a side grade, maybe a small debuff. Some will say that Versatile Trickster change is a nerf. I'm not 100% sure on that yet, even though I don't necessarily love it. I'll take it though. If it means all my wizard spells can be from any school, heck yeah. Next up, we've got the Assassin, and again, I went over the Assassin stuff in actually 2 videos now, so in the name of keeping all the changes together in one place, I will briefly review them here, but if you don't need that review, feel free to skip ahead. At level 3, Assassinate has changed in that you no longer automatically crit a surprised enemy. Instead, you do extra damage equal to your rogue level when you hit any target on round 1 with sneak attack. I know a lot of people don't like this. I think I prefer it because surprise was so unreliable, right? And I mean, surprise has changed in the new player's handbook, right? There's no longer like oh, I'm surprised, I don't get to act on my first turn in the first round of combat. It's now you just have disadvantage on your initiative rolls. So I don't even know if, critting a surprised enemy would really work the way that things are worded in the new player's handbook. I mean, maybe it would. Anytime I played an assassin, I got so frustrated that I wasn't able to use like my main ability most of the time, right? That said, yes, 1 damage per rogue level is not very much damage. They could have made this 2 very easily and it still would not be overpowered. I think if I were DMing at a table and somebody brought an assassin, I'd probably homebrew that. I mean, it is only 1 round per combat encounter after all. But yeah, it's to whoever you do sneak attack damage to, so if you can get a reaction on that opening round, a reaction attack that is, and deal sneak attack damage to a second target, you could double up on this extra damage. That's not nothing. At level 9, Infiltration Expertise lets you both mimic someone else's speech and or handwriting if you spend an hour studying them, and doesn't reduce your move speed to 0 if you use Steady Aim. But again, the way it's worded, even though Jeremy Crawford kind of seemed to say otherwise in the like rogue reveal video that WotC did. I'm pretty sure you still can't move before using steady aim, which could still hobble us a bit, but it is better. You just have to make your attack first and then you can move. At level 13, Envenom Weapons says that when we give up a d6 to use the poison option of Cunning Strike, if the enemy fails their save against it, they take 2d6 poison damage that ignores poison resistance. I like it, I just wish it were a little more damage, and I'm a little bit nervous about how much poison immunity we're going to see going forward, as well as high enemy constitution saves. Hopefully those things won't be as prevalent in the new monster manual. Also though, one thing that I saw a lot of comments about in my assassin video that is true, and I kind of missed this. Keep in mind, when we poison an enemy, they're potentially poisoned for 1 minute. They get to make their save at the end of every one of their turns, but this ability says that we do an extra 2d6 of poison damage every time they fail their save against the poison Cunning Strike that we inflicted on them. So yes, rules as written, that should mean that we can hit them with this once, and if they fail their save, we'll do 2d6 damage then, and potentially every single round for the next minute if they continue to fail their saves, and we won't have to spend the extra sneak attack die in order to get that extra damage, right? That buffs this ability, and it's one of the only instances in D&D 5e, I think, that you could call a dot, right? A damage over time thing, which is cool, and is kind of how poison should work, I think. At level 17, Death Strike is fantastic. It doubles our damage on round 1 against anyone we hit with sneak attack if they fail a constitution save against it. Yes, that means we might get it against 2 enemies again on that opening round, right? Here's hoping enemy constitution saves get a little nerf. In the end, yeah, I like the assassin. I think they could have gotten even more damage. I do like that the poison can potentially tick every turn. That helps. But yeah, surprise strikes, I think, should have been more than just 1 per rogue level. That's my biggest complaint about the subclass. I still like them. I still like them more than the 2014 version. The only time I won't like them as much is when I get surprise on an enemy. But based on experience, again, that's not very often. So if I like them 90% of the time more and 10% of the time less, feels like a good trade to me. Next up then, we've got the Soul Knife. I'm super excited to see this subclass in the player's handbook now. Admittedly, kind of like the Psy Warrior Fighter and other like new subclasses that weren't really new, there aren't a ton of changes here from what we already got with Tasha's, but hey, this is easily the coolest subclass of all rogues, right? So putting them officially in the PHB now, I like it. Anyways, at level 3, Psionic Power tells us that we can just recover a Psionic Energy die with a short rest now. It doesn't require a bonus action. Their scaling in number and size increase at the same rate as before, and the Psi-Bolstered Knack and Psychic Whispers abilities are essentially unchanged, though they did remove the "you don't have to share a common language to understand each other" verbiage from the Psychic Whispers description. So I guess you do need to share a common language now. With Psychic Blades, it now specifies that we can summon and attack with the blades on an opportunity attack as well as the attack action. Hallelujah. So that's nice. Though it doesn't specify like on an attack that we make with our reaction, and there are some things in the game that give us a reaction attack but that aren't called an opportunity attack, right? So that still feels like they missed something there, and I hope that most people just homebrew that and allow it at their table, whether it's specifically an opportunity attack or just an attack made with their reaction. Also, the properties are the same for this weapon that you are summoning, except that now it has the Vex Master property, and you can even enjoy the benefit of that mastery if you hadn't taken it for one of the 2 that you get as a rogue, and it doesn't count against those 2, meaning you can effectively know 3 weapon masteries. That might be unique among non-fighters. And this could be interesting, especially since the weapon gets summoned into a free hand and vanishes, right? Anyways, the blade still has a very nice 60-foot normal range if you throw it, and even a long range now too, 120 feet. Sadly, I think the bonus action second Psychic Blade attack is unchanged, and that bums me out a little because now that we've got the Nick property, it's hard to imagine anyone wanting to give up their bonus action for a D4 weapon attack when they could get a D6 weapon attack as part of their action instead, you know? Would have been cool if they could have buffed that second Psychic Blade attack, I think, but oh well. At level 9, the Soul Blades feature is basically the same, still giving us homing strikes and psychic teleportation, 2 very cool and potent abilities, and they work the same as before, so hey, At least they didn't get nerfed. At level 13, Psychic Veil is unchanged, still letting us go invisible with an action, etc., etc. And then at level 17, Rend Mind is also unchanged, still letting us stun a target for up to 1 minute, potentially with a wisdom save, and you have to spend 3 psionic energy dice if you want to do it more than once a day. It's a better stun lock than monks get, that's for sure. A wisdom save, right? With a DC based on our dexterity. I am actually really jealous of that, said the monk, who apparently is me. So yeah, Soul Knives, still cool. My biggest gripe is that offhand Psychic Blade doesn't get some sort of buff. I don't think I would use it if I were playing a Soul Knife most of the time anyways. But yeah, still an awesome subclass. So finally, then, we've got the most quintessential, arguably, of the rogue subclasses, the Thief. At level 3, Fast Hands is basically unchanged. They've just clarified the language a bit and used terms like native to the 2024 Handbook, like the Utilize action, or use the magic action to use a magic item, etc. And that's awesome, because yeah, we could now use a Wand of Fireballs with our bonus action. Stock up on those magic items. Second story work got a small tune-up, simply giving us a climb speed equal to our speed, and just letting us use our dexterity to determine our jump distance rather than our strength. Some potentially nice utility. Level 9, Supreme Sneak is way better. I don't need advantage on stealth checks. I'm a rogue with expertise, and now at level 7, Reliable Talent. Instead, we get a new use for our Cunning Strike, Stealth Attack. This says if we have the hide action's invisible condition, yeah, hiding gives you the invisible condition, right? Then if you spend a d6 of your sneak attack damage, this specific attack doesn't end that invisible hidden condition on you if you end your turn behind 3/4 or total cover. The bummer here, of course, is that it only works on 1 attack per turn, so forget making multiple attacks, whether because you're using light weapons, or you've multiclassed to get extra attack, etc., etc. So you're sort of the ultimate hit-and-run character here, which is cool to keep you hidden, relatively safe, but you're not going to be doing a ton of damage every round, I fear. Something rogues admittedly kind of suffer from a little, I think. I know, I'm trying to change my own paradigm. It is very hard. At level 13, Use Magic Device got a nice improvement as well. First up, it just lets us attune to up to 4 magic items now instead of the usual 3. Depending on your table, that alone might be incredibly powerful. I think we underestimate that ability that artificers get, right? The ability to attune to more magic items, especially because they can make their own. Yeah, magic items make such a big part of so many tables, and the best ones almost always require attunement, right? Also, whenever you use a magic item that has charges, remember with our bonus action, right? You roll a d6, and if you roll a 6, you don't expend a charge. Wand of Fireballs just got even better. Finally, we're told that we can use spell scrolls using intelligence as our casting modifier. If it's a cantrip or a level 1 spell, no problem, but if it's a higher level spell, we have to succeed on an Arcana check first, so make sure you grab proficiency here so you can benefit from Reliable Talent, right? The DC of which is 10 plus the spell's level. And if you succeed, the spell is cast, but if you fail, the scroll disintegrates with no spell cast. Ouch. Still, cool. Interestingly, this sort of replaces that thing from spell scrolls in general for the 2024 rules. It used to be that even if the spell was on your class's spell list, you had to make that check to cast the spell on the scroll if it was a higher level than what you could normally cast. Now, in 2024, as long as it's on your class's spell list, you cast the spell from the scroll, period. Though the DC is always 13 and the attack bonus is always +5, so that kind of sucks. Still, makes me want to dip a level 1 wizard and hoard spell scrolls on every character. Kind of like Baldur's Gate 3. Take a drink. At level 17, Thief's Reflex is unchanged, still granting 2 turns that first round of combat, with the second turn taken at a -10 to your initiative roll. Overall, the Thief got some really nice changes. The best ones are pretty magic item dependent, I think, but the rest are still either the same or improved. So that's happy. And that's it for the rogue. I kind of already gave my let's talk about the rogue meta spiel earlier. So I think they're in a good place. I love the feel, the flavor, the utility, the debuff options. I wish the damage were a little bit higher, but maybe that's unnecessary. Maybe that's not their role. And I'm at least open to the possibility of being okay with that. All right. Let's move on then to the 3 arcane casters to finish things off, right? First up, the Sorcerer. I think Sorcerers might be my favorite new full casters now. They got a lot of love. Let's talk about it. At level 1, spellcasting. First up, Sorcerers get a lot more prepared spells than they used to have spells known, especially at higher level, and I really appreciate that. A little less constricting. Also, it specifies that you can now replace a cantrip you know with another one when you gain a Sorcerer level. Before, the wording made it sound like that might only work with leveled spells. We no longer gain our Sorcerer subclass at level 1, and thinking about it, I'll admit, I can see why they used to do that with Sorcerers, Clerics, and Warlocks, right? Because those three classes kind of get their power from the thing that their subclass is, right? Whether it's a deity, or your Sorceress origin, or your patron. So moving it to 3 makes sense mechanically to kind of keep all classes even, but I will say that it feels a little weird to me from like a concept point of view, right? When I'm dipping just 1 or 2 levels into Warlock, do I have a patron? Yeah, I think so, but they maybe just haven't like manifested themselves to me yet. And if I like get out of the class and never go back, what happens to my relationship with that patron? I don't know. Some interesting questions that you'll have to figure out and maybe even discuss with the DM. Anyways, so yeah, we don't get our Sorcerer subclass at level 1 anymore, but we do get a new feature, Innate Sorcery, and it's awesome. This says that twice per day, as a bonus action, we can give ourselves a bonus to our spellcasting that lasts for 1 minute, doesn't require concentration, and it increases our spell save DC by 1 and gives us advantage on the attack rolls of sorcerer spells specifically that we cast. That's pretty awesome, honestly. Makes sorcerers feel even more blasty, I think, especially, which I appreciate since that's kind of their niche, right? Free advantage. Dang. At level 2, Font of Magic got a change in that converting spell slots to sorcery points no longer requires a bonus action, and that's a really nice quality of life improvement. Sometimes you're going to need sorcery points that you didn't know you needed, and you maybe don't want to spend your bonus action to get them, right? Now you just have them. Creating spell slots now requires you to be of the appropriate sorcerer level to create that level of spell slot, right? So no creating 5th level spell slots until you're a sorcerer 9, for example, for those who might be multiclassing. Best of all, you can actually use those sorcery points on meta magic as soon as you get them because yes, meta magic got bumped up to level 2. Woohoo! Let me go over all of the meta magic options that have changed because there are a lot of changes. Careful Spell got buffed so that if a creature would normally take half damage on a save, they take no damage as though you were an Evocation Wizard, and I love that so much. Go ahead and Fireball with Abandon. Extended Spell got buffed so that you now have advantage on concentration checks for the spell you're extending if it requires concentration, and that makes it a lot more appealing, I think, even if you don't necessarily need to extend the duration of the spell. Heightened Spell got buffed to only cost 2 sorcery points, and it no longer works on the target's first save, but all saves against the spell. Awesome. Quicken Spell didn't change, but they did add some language to remind you that you still can't cast a leveled spell more than once per turn, regardless of whether you're using your bonus action to cast it or not, and I mean, that's okay. I still think Quicken Spell is probably the most powerful meta magic option. At least it's the one that I like to use the most, that's for sure. Seeking Spell got buffed to only cost 1 sorcery point, and I guess I should note that it's now officially in the player's handbook, brought over from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, along with Transmuted Spell, which is unchanged. Subtle Spell got buffed to include material components as well. Woo freaking who, unless of course the material component is consumed by the spell specifically, or that has a cost specified by the spell. And then finally, everybody's darling, Twin Spell got, nerfed, sadly. It's the one nerf here. Now it just says that if a spell can usually be upcast to target an additional creature, then you can spend a sorcery point to increase the spell's effective level by 1. So you're basically just saving yourself higher level spell slots here, right? Fare thee well, Twinned Haste, because that and many others that people liked to twin can't just normally be upcast to impact more creatures, right? And yeah, that's sad. I will greatly miss being able to do things like that. So yeah, basically a ton of buffs here and then one major nerf. Overall, I'll take it. A lot more interesting and compelling options to choose from now, no doubt. Okay, at level 3 we get our subclass now, just like everybody else, and they're no longer called Sorceress Origins, actually. More on those later. At level 5, we get Sorceress Restoration. That's right. The previous Sorcerer Capstone at level 20 is brought all the way down to 5th level. That's incredible. Now, it is significantly nerfed, but I still love the change. Now, once per day, after a short rest, we can recover sorcery points equal to up to half our sorcerer level rounded down. So only 2 at this level, but 3 next, and hey, that's more spell slots potentially or more meta magic uses, and I think it's great. We need a lot more at level 5 than we did at level 20, right? At level 7, Sorcery Incarnate is a nice buff to my new favorite sorcerer toy. It says that when you don't have any uses of innate sorcery left, that thing we got at level 1 that gives us advantage on our spell attacks and a +1 to our DC, right? We can use it again if we spend 2 sorcery points to do so. Better yet, from now on, when our innate sorcery feature is active, you can use 2 meta magic options on every spell you cast. That's going to make some potentially really interesting meta magic combos. Super fun. Level 19, we get an epic boon, just like everybody else. Check the timestamp if you want to get an overview of those early on in the video. At level 20, the new capstone. Instead of Sorceress Restoration, we get Arcane Apotheosis. Which says that while innate sorcery is active, again, we can use 1 metamagic option on each turn without spending sorcery points on it. Okay, that is really nice. It sounds amazing, right? Depending on the situation and the metamagic options you have, but admittedly, we have a lot of sorcery points here, right? We're a level 20 sorcerer, as well as a way to recover some, and plenty of spell slots to cannibalize as well, if need be. So, if I'm being honest, I think this might sound better than it actually is. Maybe if Twin Spell hadn't gotten nerfed, it would feel particularly powerful, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll definitely be like flinging out meta magic options on pretty much every spell from this point on if we weren't doing that already, right? And yeah, sure, I mean, it makes things like heightened spell that before were arguably not super efficient more attractive, right? Okay, so yeah, base sorcerer class got nice buffs, and I don't even think I mentioned that the sorcerer spell list, the spells available to sorcerers, also increased. So yeah, just overall, sorcerers are in a much better place than they were. And they were already really good. Let's jump into the subclasses. First up, we've got Aberrant Sorcery. Not Aberrant Mind, but still the psionic-based subclass. At level 3, psionic spells. The spells we get access to here are the same, but there is one big, massive change here that I'm kind of shocked that they didn't mention in the Sorcerer reveal video that I just watched today at the time of this recording. I know it was like 3 weeks ago for you guys. And maybe I'm not surprised because it's a huge nerf. Aberrant Mind sorcerers no longer get to swap out enchantment or divination spells from other classes' spell lists. And I'm pretty shocked they went that route. It sort of makes me wonder why they decided to include Aberrant Mind and, as I'm sure you can guess, Clockwork Soul in the player's handbook at all, since they were relatively new subclasses that don't see a lot of change otherwise. I kind of have to think that maybe they just felt this feature needed to be officially nerfed, and maybe especially since sorcerers got some nice buffs otherwise, including more prepared spells and a bigger spell list. Anyways, I'm sure a lot of people will be upset by this. I didn't necessarily love or make a lot of use of Aberrant Mind and Clockwork Soul anyways, but yeah, I can see this really upsetting some people. At level 6, Psionic Sorcery got nerfed, actually, in that you do still have to have material components for the spell if they are consumed by the spell or have a cost specified with them. And, of course, a big indirect nerf in that there are a lot fewer spells you can cast as psionic spells now. No real change to psychic defenses other than it specifies that the advantage is on saves to avoid or end the charmed or frightened condition. And there are no substantive changes to Revelation in the Flesh or Warping Implosion, so that's pretty much it for the Aberrant Mind. Basically, a nerf to their spell list. But again, the Sorcerer spell list is bigger than it was in 2014 PHB, and the base subclass got a lot of great buffs, so Aberrant Minds are still doing absolutely fine, I think. Let's move on to Clockwork Soul. This is going to see a very similar treatment to the Aberrant Mind. At level 3, Clockwork spells. The only change here is that, again, we can't swap out Clockwork spells for Abjuration or Transmutation spells from other classes' lists. RIP, Treant Monk's Do-It-All Mage. The Clockwork spell list is unchanged, and the only change to Restore Balance is that you can use it charisma modifier times per day instead of proficiency bonus times per day. That's pretty standard for class and subclass features, right? Now, there are no changes to Bastion of Law. Trance of Order is only changed in that counting any roll treated as a 9 to be a 10 works on any d20 test, not just attacks, ability checks, or saves. Granted, those are basically all of the d20 tests, but there might be others on occasion. Your DM might ask you to roll a d20 to do something, right? And now you could use this on that. And there are no changes to Clockwork Cavalcade. So yeah, still a really good subclass. Arguably less good now, but coupled with the buffs to the base class, maybe better than ever. Probably better than ever. In fact, I would say definitely better than ever. All right, let's move on to Draconic Sorcery. Might be my favorite, Player's Handbook Sorcerer Subclass now, I think. So at level 3, one big change here is that right off, we aren't required to choose a dragon ancestor. We still basically do later, but it seems an important thing to note. But then Draconic Sorcerers get additional spells prepared now. Draconic spells. At level 3, we get Alter Self, Chromatic Orb, Command, and Dragon's Breath. At 5, we get Fear and Fly, totally on point thematically. At 7, Arcane Eye and Charm Monster. And at 9, Legend Lore and Summon Dragon. Nice. Draconic Resilience is greatly improved. We get 3 hit points at level 1 and 1 for each sorcerer level thereafter, so a couple more hit points, but then our AC gets bumped to 10, plus our dexterity and charisma modifiers when we're unarmored. So we've got a charisma-based unarmored defense ability in-game now. Incoming Sorlock Gish. Ooh, and an unarmored Sorkadin? There's a fun concept. Hold on, I gotta write that down on my to-do list. Unarmored Draconic Sorkadin. At level 6, Elemental Affinity. This is kind of where our Dragon Ancestor stuff got shuffled to. We now choose Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Poison, gain resistance to that damage type. We don't have to spend a sorcery point to only gain it for an hour, that's nice. And then can still add our Charisma modifier to 1 damage roll of a spell we cast that does that damage type. At level 14, Dragon Wings now only lasts an hour. Well, that's still plenty of time, but then we can only summon them once per long rest, unless we spend 3 sorcery points. But the fly speed they give is a whopping 60 feet now, and there's no prohibition against wearing armor that's not made to accommodate them, and we're not in danger of ripping our clothes off when we sprout them, which could definitely lead to some awkward role-playing moments. At level 18, Draconic Presence is changed to Dragon Companion, which lets us cast the Summon Dragon spell without material components and once per day without spending a spell slot. I kind of love how they're really leaning into all the summoning spells we got from Tasha's, right? Best of all, we can always modify it so that it doesn't require concentration. Woo! In that scenario, the spell's duration is only 1 minute instead of an hour, but that's still really nice. Yeah. I think this is my new favorite Sorcerer subclass. Maybe. I mean, Divine Soul is still pretty dang awesome, and there's no reason why we couldn't continue to use it, right? We just have to shift those level 1 features to level 3, I think, and then we're good. But yeah, dragons. I like dragons. I'll tell you what is not my favorite subclass: Wild Magic Sorcery. Unpredictability just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But let's talk about them anyways, because actually, they got some nice changes. So at level 3, Wild Magic Surge, the first and best change for Wild Magic Sorcerers is that we now get to decide when we roll that d20 to see if we get to roll on the Wild Magic Surge table instead of our DM. Oh, thank goodness. Also, we get to roll on the table when we roll a 20, not a 1, as it should be, right? Because everyone who's playing Wild Magic Sorcerers, of course, sees rolling on the Magic Surge table as a good thing, not a horrible catastrophe that it so often is. Tides of Chaos also gives us some more player agency. It just says that we get that advantage until we cast a sorcerer spell with a spell slot or finish a long rest. But then if we do cast a sorcerer spell with a spell slot before we finish the long rest, we automatically roll on the Wild Magic Surge table. Wait, so what you're saying is, so long as I use up that advantage, then cast a spell, I'll get to roll on the table? Yeah, you know that every freaking Wild Magic Sorcerer in the world is just going to constantly be making insight checks on stuff that don't need insight checks so they can use up the advantage and always be rolling on the table, right? I'm gonna insight check that rock. Woohoo! Everybody has feather beards! Oh, can't wait for that. Okay, but we should probably take a look at the table itself, right? I'm gonna put it up here for you to see in all of its glory. You can pause the video and hopefully get a gander at everything. Hopefully it's not too small for you to actually read. Because yeah, there are a ton of changes to this table. And generally, there seems to be a much lower chance of like random just silly things happening, like having bubbles come out of your mouth when you speak or having a beard of feathers, and a greater chance of some actually pretty cool stuff happening, like getting an extra action, or getting to cast all spells as a bonus action, or you and your friends turning invisible. But there is still some potentially bad stuff too, like you could randomly poison an ally for a number of hours, or, well, turn into a potted plant. And, okay, I will be honest, after going over the entire table, yeah, I kind of want to play a Wild Magic Sorcerer. It looks pretty hilarious, and mostly, like, a good thing when you roll on that Surge table. Enough so that I think it would be worth the risk. So yeah, bring on the chaos. At level 6, Bend Luck got buffed in that it only costs a single sorcery point to use. Very nice. There's no change to Controlled Chaos at 14, which is an exceptionally great ability, greatly reducing the chance that something catastrophic will happen with the Wild Magic Surge. But at 18, Spell Bombardment is now Tamed Surge. This says that once per day, immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell with a spell slot, you can create an effect of your choice from the Wild Magic Surge table instead of rolling. That's awesome. Now, if the chosen effect involves a roll, which many do now, you still have to make that roll, right? That second roll. So, like, you might have to roll a d4 to determine which creatures appear for a certain effect, or you might get to cast a random spell, but you have to roll to see what the spell is, etc. You can choose any effect in the table except for the final one, which has you roll a d6 and have you or an ally regain hit points or spell slots or sorcery points. I guess they deemed that a little too powerful for you to just choose all the time. I get it. So yeah, for reals, this subclass looks way better now than ever, and I'm super tempted to try it out. Maybe just in a one-shot? I think I could do a one-shot. Let's move on to everyone's favorite, I'm really not evil, I promise, characters, Warlocks. And maybe the only thing I'll say at the beginning here is Warlocks are the new Hexblade. It's going to be really hard not to dip into Warlock for charisma-based characters, I think, like all charisma-based characters. At least Gish's. We'll get into why. At level 1, talking about the base class, spellcasting, despite some initial changes early on in the playtest, nothing significant has really changed with the way Warlocks cast spells, the number of spells they learn, how their spell slots work, etc. Other than maybe it specifies that you can now replace a cantrip with another one when you gain a Warlock level. Again, the wording before made it sound like that might only work with leveled spells, but yeah, even though we don't get our subclass anymore at level 1, we've got a patron, but we don't know who it is or something, I don't know. We do get invocations right at level 1. At least one invocation. So let's talk about all of the invocations. First of all, we get 1 at level 1, like I said, but then 3 at level 2, 5 at level 5, 6 at level 7, and basically 1 more every 2 levels from there, so more invocations. Huzzah. But also, there are a ton of invocations that have been removed from the game, like maybe half. So, first up, Aspect of the Moon is just gone. I wonder why. As are Beast Speech, Beguiling Influence, Bewitching Whispers, Bond of the Talisman, and anything else involving Pact of the Talisman, for that matter, Book of Ancient Secrets, Chains of Carceri, did I say that right? Carceri. And Cloak of Flies, I'm pretty sad about that one, actually. Dreadful Word, Eldritch Sight, Eyes of the Runekeeper, Farscribe, Ghostly Gaze, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones, Grasp of Hadar, ouch. Improved Pact Weapon, ouch. Lance of Lethargy, boo. Maddening Hex, Minions of Chaos, Mire the Mind, Relentless Hex, Sculptor of Flesh, Shroud of Shadows, Sign of Ill Omen, Thief of Five Fates, Tomb of Levistus, oh, that was a fun one. Trickster's Escape, Undying Servitude, and Voice of the Chainmaster. Whew, that is quite a list. In general, all of the you can cast the spell one time using a Warlock spell slot things seem to be gone, which I'm fine with, honestly. They all seemed a little lame to me. And then, yeah, some Eldritch Blast buffs are removed. A lot of the Pact of the Chain and Tome specific ones are gone. and a bunch of others that were maybe a little niche or circumstantial. I guess they were just wanting to simplify the list and clean things up for new players, mostly. As for the rest, I will just mention the ones that have changed significantly. Agonizing Blast now doesn't just add your charisma modifier in damage to Eldritch Blast. Instead, you get to choose the cantrip it adds damage to. Now, because of the unique way that Eldritch Blast still fires multiple beams, thus potentially letting you get multiple charisma mod damage bumps with a single cast, right, at later levels, I think it's still the go-to, but you may have good reason for a different option. Maybe Thunderclap to get a damage bump on an AoE cantrip. Also, the invocation is repeatable, meaning you can take it multiple times, choosing a different cantrip each time. Ascendant Step is now available at 5th level instead of 9th, that's nice. Devil's Sight requires level 2, so you can't take it right away, and we see that a lot on a lot of invocations. We've got a new invocation, we've got a few of those actually, but this is the first, Devouring Blade. This requires the Pact of the Blade invocation, more on that in a minute, and level 12, but check this out. Tells you that Thirsting Blade gives you not just one attack, but when you take this invocation, you get 2 extra attacks from your Pact weapon. That's right. Warlocks can now have as many attacks as a straight fighter at level 12 anyways. That's nuts, right? I'm not complaining, but that feels a little loco. So much for that martial caster divide. Yeah, the first full build that I'm going to do has to be a Pact of the Blade Warlock, I think now. I mean, it's somewhat poetic, right? It was the very first video I ever did. Okay. Anyways, Eldritch Spear now applies to any cantrip that deals damage, is repeatable, this is a theme, and increases by a number of feet equal to 30 times your Warlock level instead of a flat 300 feet on Eldritch Blast. Fiendish Vigor has a level 2 prerequisite, but gives the maximum number of temporary hit points when you cast it, no dice roll needed. Gaze of Two Minds has a level 5 requirement, but now only costs a bonus action to maintain. It doesn't blind and deafen you while using it, and perhaps best of all, lets you cast spells from your target's location or your own, as long as you're within 60 feet. Gift of the Protectors now allows you to write a number of names equal to your charisma modifier instead of your proficiency bonus. Investment of the Chainmaster has a level 5 prerequisite and causes your familiar to do radiant or necrotic damage instead of magical, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, which is not a thing anymore. Lessons of the First Ones is a new invocation that allows you to take a free origin feat of your choice. Nice. It's repeatable. Life Drinker sees a nerf and a buff. Instead of charisma modifier in extra damage, it's just a d6 of necrotic, psychic, or radiant, and worse yet, it's only once per turn. Its prerequisite is lowered to 9th level though, and it lets you also roll one of your hit dice and heal like you do when you take a short rest. So you're actually life drinking, right? It makes sense. I'm a little sad about the damage loss, but still stoked about getting a 3rd attack. So yeah, I'll take it. Mask of the Many Faces now has a level 2 requirement. Master of Myriad Forms level requirement gets lowered from 15 to 5. Dang. Misty Visions has a level 2 requirement. One with the Shadows is way better, letting you cast invisibility without spending a spell slot when in dim light or darkness, but it's just the invisibility spell. It doesn't necessarily end early when you do like anything, right? I mean, it still ends when the invisibility spell normally ends, but that's much better. Otherworldly Leap has its level prerequisite lowered from 9th level to 2nd. Nice. Repelling Blast works on any cantrip that requires an attack roll, is repeatable, and has a level 2 requirement. Again, this is a common theme, right? Visions of Distant Realms had its level requirement lowered from 15th to 9th. Whispers of the Grave was lowered from 9th to 7th, and Witch Sight just straight up gives you True Sight now, out to 30 feet. So almost every invocation got changed. And we haven't even talked about pacts yet. So Pact boons are no longer like a thing that you get at level 3. Instead, they are invocations. Pact of the Chain now lets you cast the spell without spending a spell slot and adds a bunch of other potential familiars, a skeleton, a slod tadpole, a sphinx of wonder, a venomous snake. Super cool. Pact of the Tome now lets you add 2 first-level ritual spells in addition to the cantrips, so it's like the Book of Ancient Secrets invocation worked into it, right? And then we have the Pact of the Blade, the darling of Gishes everywhere, because yes, With Pact of the Blade, you can now use your Charisma for your attack stat for your Pact weapon, meaning we can stop already with all those freaking Hexblade tips. Oh, and there was much rejoicing against all of the Hexblade haters. Now it can be the Warlock subclass dip of our choice, or frankly, no Warlock subclass. We just take a level 1 dip and we're out. Because yeah, these Pact Invocations are among the only ones that we can get at level 1 Warlock. Also, with Pact of the Blade, the weapon can now do necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage if we want, and we decide whenever we attack with it. That is pretty fantastic, and considering the third attack option we get at level 12, yeah, I'm thinking Warlocks might be leading the pack on Gish damage for 2024 rules. Maybe for all weapon user damage. Okay. That is it for Invocations, I think. Let's move on, finally. At level 2, we get a new feature, Magical Cunning. This tells us that once per day, we can spend 1 minute performing a rite that will let us regain half of our maximum Pact magic spell slots rounded up. That is nice. We still get them back on a short rest, but now we can get 1 or 2 back once per day with a 1 minute ritual in a pinch. And we're seeing a lot of this kind of resource recuperation stuff happening for almost all classes, and I really like it. At level 3, we get our subclass, our Pact now, just like everyone else. At level 9, here's something new, Contact Patron. It tells us we always have the Contact Other Plane spell prepared, and then once per day can cast it without spending a spell slot to contact our patron. I love this. Some actual game mechanics to let us interact with our patron. So on point. Also, when we cast the spell in this way, we automatically succeed on the saving throw that spell requires. Sweet. At level 11, Mystic Arcanum, the only change is that we can now swap out the spell we chose when we gain a Warlock level. That's nice. I'll admit, I really wish they would have allowed us to expend the use of the Mystic Arcanum to upcast one of our existing Warlock spells, if it could be upcast, but I understand why they wouldn't allow that. At level 9, we get an epic boon like everyone else. Check the timestamp early on in the video if you want to refresh on those. And then at level 20, the Warlock Capstone Eldritch Master is changed in wording, but it's functionally the same. It still feels a little meh to me for a capstone, especially since we have Magical Cunning now, but oh well. Overall, it feels like the base class is in a really, really solid place. All right, let's get into the subclasses. So, first up, we've got Archfey, and this one looks like a freaking riot. It has been changed so much from the 2014 version. You're basically Nightcrawler, teleporting all over the place. At level 3, first off, let me say that subclass spells for Warlocks are now just added to your spell list like every other class that gets extra spells with their subclass. Thank goodness. As opposed to the way it used to work where they were just added to your spell list, but you didn't just like automatically have them prepared, right? As for what Archfays get, the only difference is that at level 3, they now also get Misty Step, which totally tracks for what we're about to see. Steps of the Fae here replaces Fae Presence and is totally different. Now, this ability says that we can cast Misty Step Charisma modifier times per day without spending a spell slot. Also, whenever we cast the spell, regardless of whether we use a spell slot or not, we can choose to either use Refreshing Step to give ourselves or a creature within 10 feet of us 1d10 temporary hit points after we teleport, or use Taunting Step to force creatures within 5 feet of the space that you left to make a wisdom save or have disadvantage on attack rolls against anyone other than you until your next turn. Another Warlock tank incoming? Now, one note, it doesn't specify creatures of your choice here, so I guess rules as written this would affect allies as well, which is weird. I wonder if they'll errata that. Maybe not. Just make sure that you don't have friends standing nearby when you teleport away so that they don't now have disadvantage on attacking enemies other than you, or else they might start attacking you. At level 6, our feature is still called Misty Escape, but is totally different. It says we can cast Misty Step as a reaction when we take damage, and we continue to enjoy all of the cool buffs and benefits to Misty Step when we do it in this scenario too, right? Also, we get a couple new options of things we can do when we cast the spell. Disappearing Step makes us invisible until the start of our next turn, or until after we attack, do damage, or cast a spell. Nice that it's after, so we could still attack with advantage, for example. While Dreadful Step says that creatures within 5 feet of the space we left or appear in, our choice, have to make a wisdom save or take 2d10 psychic damage. We are getting a nice bamfy bag of tricks here. At level 10, Beguiling Defenses still makes us immune to the charmed condition, but now when we get hit by an attack roll, we can use a reaction to cut the damage in half and force the attacker to make a wisdom save or take psychic damage equal to the damage we take. So it's kind of like a forced warding bond that you put on an enemy. Pretty cool. We can only do this once per day unless we spend a spell slot to do it again. At level 14, Bewitching Magic says that immediately after we cast an enchantment or illusion spell using an action and a spell slot, you can Misty Step as part of the same action without spending a spell slot. And yes, again, we could choose one of our fun tricks to add to that casting as well. I can't wait to try this one out in game. It just sounds like so much fun. Definitely the most fun Warlock subclass. And maybe the most potent too. The Celestial Warlock up next is again pretty similar to the old version that we got in Xanathar's Guide to Everything with some slight adjustments. At level 3, the only differences to the spells here are that first, we don't automatically get the Light and Sacred Flame cantrips. Not a huge loss, but then for our leveled spells, we get to add Aid to the list at level 3, and at level 9, we get Summon Celestial, which was new to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which came out after Xanathar's, instead of Flame Strike. Makes perfect sense. At level 10, we get Celestial Resilience. There are no changes to Healing Light, there's no changes to Radiant Soul, so moving on to level 10, Celestial Resilience now grants temporary hit points when you use your Magical Cunning feature or finish a short or long rest. Otherwise, it's the same. At level 14, Searing Vengeance is the same except for this big buff. You can now use it on yourself or an ally within 60 feet who's about to make a death save. Makes Celestial Warlocks an even better healer than before. They're looking solid. But yeah, that's it for Celestials. Not a ton of changes, but some little tweaks, some little buffs, and still a great healer option. Maybe rivaling your Druids and Clerics now if they weren't before. And Bards, of course. Bards are good at everything. Okay, moving on. Fiends, that most quintessential of Warlocks. They get some mostly minor adjustments. Level 3, for spells, they now get Suggestion instead of Blindness, Deafness, and at level 9, instead of Flame Strike and Hallow, they get Gesh and Insect Plague. Quite different, a little more decayish. Dark One's Blessing got the Baldur's Gate 3 treatment, take a drink, in that it works if you or anyone else within 10 feet of you reduces an enemy to 0 hit points, and that's awesome, actually. That's maybe more than a minor buff. That's a lot of temporary hit points coming your way. At level 6, Dark One's Own Luck was changed in that you can now use a charisma modifier times per day, no more than once per roll. For most people, that's probably going to be a buff over once per short rest, right? At level 10, Fiendish Resilience got buffed in that there's no damage from magical weapons or silver weapons ignores this resistance verbiage. You just have your resistance to a damage type of your choice, period. At level 14, Hurl Through Hell. A lot of people are going to be sad about this as it got nerfed, but it also got buffed at the same time. So you now get to try and save against it. It's not just automatic, but hey, it's a charisma save, so it'll probably work. Also, the damage is lowered from 8d10 to 10d10, but good news, we can now use it more than once per day if we spend a spell slot for it. I mean, in the end, I think I'll take this version over the old one. It's still a great ability. And that's pretty much it for the Fiend. Mostly just buffs here. So, previously one of the maybe good not great subclasses is now great. And speaking of great, let's finish this up with great old ones, the Gulaks. And yeah, I think this is my new favorite. And I don't even like Illithids or tentacles. But this is just plain awesome. So, okay. As for our spell list here, at level 5, we now get Hunger of Hadar instead of Sending, makes sense. At level 7, we get Confusion and Summon Aberration instead of Dominate Beast and Everard's Black Tentacles. I would have thought they'd give us, Summon Aberration and Black Tentacles, but whatever. And at level 9, we get Modify Memory instead of Dominate Person. I like some of those changes, sad about others. Still a decent list, though. Awakened Mind at level 3 got buffed in that you can now keep your telepathic link alive as long as you're within a number of miles equal to your charisma modifier. It does cost a bonus action to establish the link, though. We get a second feature at level 3, though, Psychic Spells, which says that When we cast a Warlock spell that does damage, we can change the damage to Psychic. That's pretty good. Also, when you cast an enchantment or an illusion spell, you can do so without verbal or somatic components, like having the old subtle spell Meta Magic for free on certain spells anyways. Pretty cool, pretty Psychic. At level 6, a Clairvoyant Combatant replaces the old Entropic Ward. Now, when you use Awakened Mind, you can force the creature to make a Wisdom save, or they have disadvantage on all attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against them. You can do this once per rest, or again if you spend a spell slot. And I love this feature so much. It's basically like using the old Darkness Devil Sight trick, or Shadow of Moil, or Greater Invisibility at higher levels, but it doesn't require concentration. Now granted, it only works on a single enemy, but yeah, getting to use this and like Hex, for example, is gonna be fun. Wait, why would you use Hex at this level? You might be asking. Well, it's because at level 10, we now get a little feature called Eldritch Hex, and this says that we always have Hex prepared, and when we cast Hex and choose an ability for them to have disadvantage on ability checks for, right? A lot of people even forget that that's part of the Hex spell. Then they also have disadvantage on saving throws for that ability. Wow. Yeah, I am definitely thinking about ways to build around that feature for sure. Now, granted, a lot of the most powerful saving throw spells are concentration spells, right? So we couldn't Hex and do something else. But this is great to combine with something that an ally is doing, or think of a really potent spell that does require a saving throw, but not concentration. I'm thinking of some right now. Oh, we also still get Thought Shield at this level, and it hasn't changed. At level 14, Create Thrall is way better. Now when we cast Summon Aberration, a potent summoning spell, we can modify it so that it doesn't require concentration. In that case, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute, and the aberrant gains temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. Also, the first time each turn that they hit someone under the effect of your Hex, they deal that extra 1d6 in psychic damage. So similar to what we see with the Beastmaster's Pet and Hunter's Mark, right? But I feel like this is a more potent combo here. Hex your target, causing them to take extra damage and have disadvantage on a save of your choice, and still be able to summon an aberration to boot because it's not requiring concentration, right? That's going to make us tankier, it's going to make us hit harder. I love it. And I love this subclass. I think it probably is the most like mechanically powerful of the Warlock subclasses now, especially now that we don't need Hexblade. Genie locks are still great, and Undead is good, and I mean, all of the new subclasses are really potent now. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good Warlock subclasses to choose from now. More than we had before, I think. And the base class got buffed, so Warlocks are looking fantastic. All right, we have arrived at the final class. The previous reigning champion of most powerful class in D&D 5e, right? I mean, some people might argue that it'd be something else, maybe the Paladin, maybe the Cleric, I don't think so, but I mean, come on, it's the Wizard. Their spell list is so massive, they're so good. Do they continue to reign supreme? Let's find out. So, at level 1, spellcasting. You can now replace a cantrip you know after a long rest. Some added flexibility there that we first saw in Tasha's. Also, the number of spells you can prepare is no longer affected by your intelligence modifier. You simply have a set number, just like all other spellcasters. Though wizards get significantly more they can prepare compared to other casters. It basically starts at 4 and goes up by 1 every level, except for level 12 for some weird reason. Your spells known still starts at 6 and increases by 2 with every wizard level, right? So you've still got a spell book, and there's a difference between how many spells you know and then how many you can prepare. Ritual casting has been changed to Ritual Adept. Ritual spells have changed slightly for 2024 in that any class can cast a spell as a ritual if they have access to that spell as part of their class spell list. Wizards, however, can still read a ritual spell they know from their spell book, and it needn't take up one of their prepared spells, so that's a nice benefit for wizards. At level 2, there's no change to Arcane Recovery, but we get a new feature called Scholar. This says that we can gain expertise in Arcana, History, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, or Religion, so long as we have proficiency, of course. Nice little utility bump, but I'm not sure if it makes up for having to delay our subclass by a level, honestly. Level 2 Wizard feels pretty weak now compared to other casters, I think. Oh well. At level 3, yeah, we get our subclass now like everyone else. More on those in a minute. At level 5, we get a new feature, Memorize Spell, which says that we can replace one of our prepared leveled spells with another one from our spell book with just a short rest. It'll be nice in a pinch if we come upon a huge cliff we need to scale, but we didn't have fly prepared before or something like that, right? Jumping all the way to level 18, Spell Mastery now specifies that the spells have to have a casting time of 1 action. That's kind of rough. No shield spell, no Misty Step, no Shadow Blade. And nobody else cared about Shadow Blade except me. Also, it says that you always have them prepared. It doesn't go on to say that they don't count against the spells you can have prepared. I mean, I have to assume that's the intent. And maybe I'm just misinterpreting that. But otherwise, yeah, it's essentially unchanged. At level 19, we get an epic boon like everyone else. And, check the timestamp down under the Barbarian if you want a recap of the epic boons. But then at level 20, signature spells is essentially unchanged. Still really good, but yeah, unchanged. So not a lot different with the base wizard subclass. It doesn't really feel more powerful to me. Again, if they were the most powerful class in the game previously, maybe that's fine, right? But yeah, some people are going to be a little bugged. Let's jump into subclasses. First up, we've got the Abjurer. One of my favorite changes to all wizard subclasses is how they took a mostly useless feature from before and made it pretty dang good now. Most wizard subclasses would get this savant feature that used to let them copy spells from their spell school faster and more cheaply, right? Now it just says we get to pick 2 spells from the school, no higher than level 2, and add them to our spellbook for free. And also, whenever we gain access to a new level of wizard spell slots, we can add a wizard spell from this school for the spell slot for free, as long as we've got the appropriate spell slots. Notice that it doesn't say like we have to have access to that level of wizard spells, interestingly. So potentially if we were multi-classing and say had 6 levels of cleric or something and then added 3 levels of wizard, well, we'd have 5th level spell slots and could, I believe, with this feature, pick up a 5th level Abjuration wizard spell, even though we aren't a 9th level wizard. If that's true, I'm gonna have fun with that one. But anyways, it's just one more way for wizards to get even more spells than anybody else. Now, at level 3 here, for Abjuration wizards, there's a subtle but important change to Arcane Ward, in that it specifies we have to cast an Abjuration spell with a spell slot in order to buff the ward. Thus, no cheesing it with the Warlock's Armor of Shadows invocation that lets us cast Mage Armor without spending a spell slot to max out our ward for free, right? It's okay. I'm fine with them closing up loopholes like this. Also, they clarify that if we have any resistances or vulnerabilities, we apply them before reducing the ward's hit points, which is really nice if we can get resistance, and really bad if we have vulnerability, but we don't typically suffer a lot of vulnerability, so mostly that's going to be a great thing for us. We also are told that as a bonus action, we can expend any spell slot, and the ward will regain a number of hit points equal to twice the level of the spell slot expended, just as though we had cast an Abjuration spell. A really nice option if we're trying to buff ourselves up before a fight but don't necessarily have any reason to cast an Abjuration spell, right? Or we're in the middle of the fight and we want to cast a spell with our action, but it's not an Abjuration spell and we want to buff the hit points of our ward. One note, there are more spells that are listed as Abjuration spells than before too. I'm not going to go into that here since I just don't have time. I mean, this video is already so long, but I'm sure you can find a really fantastic resource that's going to go into all the changes to all the spells. At level 6, the only difference to projected ward here is that it specifies that we need to apply resistances or vulnerabilities that the ally we're protecting may have before we reduce the ward's hit points, making this especially good on like barbarians, right? Or anybody else with like a lot of good resistances. At level 10, Spellbreaker replaces Improved Abjuration and says that we always have Counterspell and Dispel Magic prepared that we can cast Dispel Magic as a bonus action and can add our proficiency bonus to its ability check even, and that when we cast either with a spell slot, the slot isn't expended if the spell fails to stop or dispel a spell. That's pretty awesome, though it is a bit of a bummer that we lost that Counterspell proficiency bonus too, right? Feels to me like Wizards is pretty interested in nerfing Counterspell for 2024, which I think I'm okay with. Finally, there's no change to the spell resistance feature, so that's it for Abjurers. Some buffs, Counterspell nerf, still a super solid subclass, still really tanky, and kind of a fun, almost anti-mage mage, right? Next up, the Diviner, previously thought by many to be the strongest wizard subclass. is it still? At level 3, Divination Savant. As with Abjuration Savant, same changes, but for the Divination school, right? So we get more Divination school spells. Very nice. But what about Portent? That arguably overpowered feature, definitely their most famous one. I don't actually think it's OP personally, but also it's pretty much unchanged. It just specifies that it works for any D20 test. At level 10, the third eye is changed in that the benefit we choose only takes a bonus action, no longer ends if we're incapacitated, and then the dark vision option gives dark vision out to 120 feet, and see invisibility lets us cast the see invisibility spell without spending a spell slot, which is better than just being able to see invisible creatures within 10 feet, right? Especially since it also allows you to see into the ethereal plane, so no need for the ethereal sight option, which has been removed as an option. One question I have. We're told the third eye benefit lasts until we start a short or long rest, but the see invisibility spell only lasts an hour. I'm not sure which one is the specific that overrules the general here. I would think we'd have the spell on us until we took a short rest, but be sure to discuss with your DM. But then there's no change to the level 14 Greater Portent feature, so that's pretty much it for Diviners. And yeah, still super solid. Still wizards, and their most potent ability basically went unchanged. So I like them. Let's move on to Evokers, one of the most common, maybe the most quintessential of wizards, at least for blasters. At level 3, we get Evocation Savant, again, same as the others, but with evocation spells, so now we're just going to have like every evocation spell in the game, probably. Potent Cantrip, this is an interesting change to me. So they basically took the first Evoker ability, Sculpt Spells, and swapped it with the 6th level ability, Potent Cantrip, which we now get right here at level 3, and they buffed it. Now, when we miss with an attack roll cantrip or the enemy saves against a damaging saving throw cantrip, they still take half the cantrip's damage. That feels like, yeah, I like that a lot. And I guess the main reason I really like it is because it makes me want to do a lot of level 3 wizard multi-class tips now. I mean, I'm already thinking about Eldritch Blast builds and Death Cleric builds that are really going to benefit from this, and having it at level 3 makes it so much more attainable than level 6, right? But then at level 6, yeah, we get Sculpt Spells now, and it's unchanged except that they moved it to level 6. And you know what? This makes a lot more sense because honestly, how many of us were casting Burning Hands or Dragon's Breath and being so glad we had Sculpt Spells, right? Maybe once in a while, but no. We want it for Fireball. And that didn't come until like Wizard level 5, so this swap is a fantastic move by Wizards for Wizards. Oh, whew. No change to Empowered Evocation here. It's still really nice for blasters, but Overchannel clarifies that you only deal max damage with the spell on the turn you cast it, just to avoid questions about spells that do damage over multiple rounds, I guess. But no other changes for Evokers, and I mean, I already really liked Evocation Wizards just because I'm just one of those guys, right? Like if I'm gonna play like a caster wizard, not a blade singer, I probably want to be throwing out lots of fireballs and lightning bolts, and they're just better now at doing the thing that they were already really good at. So I love them. All right. Bringing up the rear, the one that had maybe the most changes, I think, and that a lot of people are really loving based on Wizards of the Coast kind of reveal video, the Illusionist. So at level 3, Illusion Savant, same as the others, but with illusion spells, right? You get more illusion spells. And then Improved Illusions is vastly improved. The buffs to Minor Illusion are still there, but also says that we can cast Minor Illusion with a bonus action. That's really nice. Also, this feature now lets us cast illusion spells without verbal components, which is great if we're silenced or hiding. And if an illusion spell we cast has a range of 10 feet or more, the range is increased by 60 feet. That's pretty great. At level 6, Phantasmal Creatures replaces the Malleable Illusions and gives us something a lot more useful and concrete. We just always have Summon Beast and Summon Fae prepared, two very strong summoning spells, and when you cast either of them, you can change the school to Illusion. So no verbal components, right? And an enhanced range, yeah. Now when we do so, it makes them appear spectral. And also, once per day, we can cast the illusion version of each spell without spending a spell slot, but doing so does have the creature's hit points. Still, worth it. At level 10, Illusory Self is changed in that you can use it after getting hit and not just when someone tries to attack you, thus ensuring that you won't waste it. That's awesome. Also, you can now use the feature again before you rest by spending a 2nd level spell slot or higher, no action required. Pretty nice defensive option to just force an attack to miss. Potentially even better than shield, if more expensive, though it only works against a single hit, right? It doesn't raise your AC until your next turn like shield does, but situationally, yeah. If that hit is a crit or is otherwise going to knock you out, you'll love having this. But then at level 14, Illusory Reality is basically unchanged. So illusionists are in a great place, and I have never played an illusionist in game before, nor have I built one. I'm probably going to need to modify that. I get a lot of requests for it. It's always just to me been challenging because so much about illusions in the game kind of depends on your DM and how they run things. It can just feel a little wishy-washy to me. Things aren't always super concrete, but I feel like we got a lot more sort of concrete tools to play with here, and that's exciting. So, all in all, it feels like Wizards had the least amount of changes to me of all classes, maybe. But, like I've said, I mean, to be fair, they were arguably the strongest class in the game before. And they might still be, depending on your definition of what makes a class strong. And there are more spells available for them when you compare to the 2014 Handbook, so yeah. I really like the tweaks and the shifts and the little extra things they got, and they're still in a very, very good place. But, guess what? That was the last class. We did it! You guys, can't believe it. Whew, that took a long time. But I hope you found this a really useful resource and guide. I hope you'll return to this video often to pick up on stuff that you maybe missed out on. I am so excited to start now building characters using the 2024 rulebook. But just a little warning. The video that I'm coming out with next week is actually about another TTRPG. It's not about D&D. I know, that might feel like weird timing, but believe me, I am thrilled to be doing this video, and I know that a lot of you will be too. So please tune in on Tuesday to check out this third-party TTRPG that's going to be launching a Kickstarter that day. There's a little clue. You might be able to guess what I'm going to be talking about. But yeah, after that, I'm just diving straight into 2024 rules builds, and I'm super excited about it. I hope you guys know that I love you. I do. Thank you so much for watching, for supporting. I'm so grateful for you. I truly am. I hope that you have a fantastic day and a great week. And if you don't, I hope that you will not give up. You can do this. Yes, you can. I hope that you do good and be kind and stay safe, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Sleep, sleep tonight, and may your dreams be realized. If the thundercloud passes rain, so let it rain, rain down on him. So let it be. So let it be. Oh, I used to sing that song, MLK, to my youngest daughter when she was little to help put her to sleep. And it seemed like a really fitting end to this marathon that you have just slogged your way through. I can't believe you're still watching the outtakes, actually. I don't even know how long the video is, because I'm just about to start recording the first sitting of it, but I'm guessing it's probably 3 to 4 hours, so yeah, you deserve a medal. Or, hopefully, you're fast asleep, and that little lullaby there just kind of gave you some nice dreams. I don't know. I moved the light back to be centered instead of off. Last couple videos, it was like off to the side. Let me know what you think, if you like one or the other more. I'm thinking I might kind of like the direct a little better after sort of watching it, but maybe that's just because this is what I'm used to. I don't know. I have not even started recording this yet, and I'm already exhausted. Because my script is like 69 pages long. Usually for reference, they're like 13, 14. So I'm either going to have to talk fast or cut some stuff out. I don't know how we're going to get through this, but we're going to do it. It'll be worth it. Whenever we take the attack action or make an opportunity attack specifically. Yeah, that's such a silly oversight that I don't know how they could have missed, but whatever. Okay. I think sorcerers, well, let me save that. I'll save that for the end. Well, no, I'll say it now. Oh, I already said that. This ability, now, well, just go, keep going. Maybe rivaling, well, I don't need to say that. Confirm that with Treant Monk. Is that available for Warlocks? Let me just confirm that first, real quick. All right, I gotta pee. And that's it for the Wild Totem. What's the name of this one again? I'm gonna have to get used to these new names. Wild Heart. Thank you. Was it Tasha's that came in, or was it Xanathar? Gosh dang. I feel like I'm doing like a, I don't know, some sort of like Jerry Lewis marathon, telethon, trying to raise money for some charity. No Shepherd. No focus on Shepherd. Gosh, I thought I fixed this. If I would have just kept reading my script, I wouldn't have had to look that up. Archer Chalice. I always get crap about how I pronounce that. All right. Whew. Should I try and bang out one more? No. Tired. My voice hurts. I'm going to go home. I'm going to take a nap. Actually, you can include this in there. Oh, that was tough. That was the first one I took notes on, and my notes were not as coherent or written out. It was almost more of a bullet point thing, and I do better with a complete and full script. I've been working on this video since I was 12 years old. All right, Snake Eyes, you ready? You ready to do this? Coming down the home stretch. Day 3. Day 3 of the same video. Oh, but there's so much good stuff. Okay, let's see here. Gotta scroll. Why do I always do this? Bards. Did I like fit straight on better, but do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. Oh, what's the Walt Whitman line? It's like my favorite line from Leaves of Grass. I think I got the mic problem solved at least. I just kind of turned it around and yeah, it hasn't moved for a while. So, hopefully this will just be the new norm. 2 monks, we're getting close. Paladin. Gave my hair time to dry. Got out of the shower. Dry-ish. It's always hard to, it's hard to just go into like a cold open or just like right on to the next class without some sort of preamble. I need like a warm-up. Maybe that's why my preambles are so long for each video. All right. Pring. I kind of went over a lot of this when I did that assassin. Oh my gosh, my thing's moving too fast. What happened? Scroll speed 26. No, it's supposed to be like 6. You threw off my groove. I'm sorry, you've thrown off the Emperor's groove. Unfortunately. But you could be like poisoning and trippening. Trippening? We did it, Dallin! Yay!